The spine of my textbook was cold against my forearm. Organic chemistry. A special kind of hell reserved for pre-med students. I hated it. I hated the dorm room, a concrete box that always smelled faintly of stale pizza and Leo's turpentine. And right now, I really hated Leo. Seriously? I said, not looking up from a diagram of a benzene ring. You brought more junk into this closet? It's not junk, Alex. It's an antique. Leo's voice was muffled. He was on the other side of the room, grunting with effort. It has character. I finally glanced over. He was wrestling a large, upright mirror into the corner next to his easel. The frame was dark wood, almost black, with intricate carvings that looked like tangled roots or veins. Patches of greenish mold dotted the edges. It looked like it had been dredged from a swamp. It has termites, I shot back, and probably the bubonic plague. Where did you even get that thing? Thrift store down on Elm. $5. He beamed, stepping back to admire his prize. He pulled the sleeve of his paint-splattered sweatshirt down over his hand and started rubbing at the glass. It was filmed over with decades of grime. Look at that craftsmanship. They don't make things like this anymore. I rolled my eyes and tried to focus on electrophilic aromatic substitution. The scratching of his sleeve against the glass was an irritating, rhythmic sound. Scrape, rub. Scrape, I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. Just don't blame me when you wake up with some ancient curse. As he wiped a clear patch in the center, I caught my own reflection. Haggard. Tired. The fluorescent desk lamp carving shadows under my eyes. For a split second, a flicker of movement in the glass, my own face twisted. A grimace. A flash of teeth. I blinked. It was gone. My reflection was just me again, staring back, motionless. Weird glass, I mumbled, turning the page. Probably warped. Must be. The stress was getting to me. Too many all-nighters. Not enough sleep. I had a major exam on Friday. I didn't have time for this. I didn't have time for Leo's junk, or for my own eyes playing tricks on me. The night deepened. The sounds of the dorm faded away, replaced by the low hum of my lamp and the whisper of turning pages. Leo had been asleep for hours, a lump under his comforter, his soft snores, a steady, unobtrusive rhythm in the background. It was just me, the textbook, and 300 pages of chemical bonds to memorize before dawn. Scritch. I froze. My pen hovered over the paper. It was a small sound, sharp, close by. Scritch, scratch. It came from the corner. From the mirror. My first thought was a mouse. The building was old. It wouldn't be the first time. I held my breath, listening. The silence of the room flooded back in, thick and heavy. Nothing. I let my breath out slowly, my heart thumping a little too hard. Just the building settling. Or a mouse. Whatever. I had to focus. I tried to read the same sentence again. The directing effects of substituents on. My eyes drifted up from the page, across the small room, to the mirror. Its surface was dark, reflecting the dim space like a pool of black water. I could see the vague shape of Leo's bed, the lump of his sleeping form. And my blood ran cold. In the reflection, the comforter was not on Leo. It was pooled on the floor beside the bed, leaving the reflected image of my roommate exposed to the cool night air. I looked from the mirror to the real world. Leo, in his bed, the thick blue comforter pulled up to his chest. I looked back at the mirror, the reflection of Leo, lying in the same position. No comforter. The space beside the bed, empty floor. It wasn't possible. No, I whispered. My throat was suddenly dry. This wasn't warped glass. This wasn't a trick of the light. My body moved on its own. The chair scraped against the floor as I stood up, the sound unnaturally loud. My textbook slid from the desk and hit the ground with a dull thud. I didn't care. I couldn't take my eyes off the mirror. I took one step, then another. The floorboards creaked under my weight. My world had shrunk to the 4-foot path between my desk and that cursed piece of furniture. Was I losing my mind? Was this what a psychotic break felt like? A visual hallucination brought on by sleep deprivation and caffeine? I was 3 feet away. I could see my own reflection now, pale and wide-eyed. I could see the reflection of Leo's bed behind me, the blanket still inexplicably missing. I got closer. My reflection didn't waver. It was perfectly clear. It was me. And then it smiled. It wasn't my smile. It was a slow, deliberate pull at the corners of the mouth. A predator smile. Vicious and knowing. My own face, the one I shaved every morning, was looking at me with absolute malice. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I couldn't breathe. The reflection raised a hand. Its hand. Not mine. My own arms were pinned to my sides, stiff with terror. It brought a single, long finger up to its smiling lips. Shh. A choked gasp escaped my throat. I stumbled backward, my legs turning to water. I hit the edge of my desk hard. The pain, a distant, unimportant thing. My eyes darted to Leo, my only anchor to reality, my only help. He was twitching. His whole body was convulsing under the blanket, his face contorted in a silent scream. His limbs jerked, his back arched. A seizure. He was having a nightmare, a bad one. Leo! My voice was a useless croak. I had to wake him up. Had to call for help. My phone. It was on the desk. I scrambled for it, my fingers fumbling. My hand closed around the cool plastic. I pressed the side button. Nothing. I pressed it again. Harder. The screen remained black. Dead. It was fully charged an hour ago. I stared at the blank, lifeless rectangle in my hand. It wasn't just dead. It felt void. A new sound cut through the air. A soft, wet creak. It wasn't coming from the mirror. It was coming from Leo's bed. I dropped the phone and threw myself sideways, scrambling under my desk without a second thought. I curled into a ball, my back pressed against the wall, my knees pulled to my chest. I held my breath, trying to make myself small, invisible. My mind was a blank screen of pure, animal fear. Creak. The sound of weight shifting on a mattress. I squeezed my eyes shut. Don't look, don't look, don't look. But I had to. I cracked one eyelid open. Through the gap between the desk and the floor, I had a clear view of Leo's bed. He was sitting up. His movements were wrong. Stiff. Unnatural. They weren't the fluid motions of a person waking up. They were sharp, staccato jerks, like a marionette whose strings were being pulled by a clumsy puppeteer. His head was bowed, chin to his chest. His arms were locked straight at his sides. Don't let him see me. Please, God, don't let him see me. As if in answer to my prayer, his head slowly, mechanically turned. It rotated on his neck with a faint clicking sound, turning not toward the door, not toward the window, but directly toward my hiding spot. His eyes were still closed, but he knew exactly where I was. The breath I was holding caught in my lungs, a painful burning knot. He swung his legs over the side of the bed. His bare feet touched the wooden floor with a soft, deliberate slap. Then the other. He was facing me. A puppet, sitting on the edge of its stage, staring blindly at its audience of one. Then he started to move. He didn't stand up. He slid off the bed and onto his hands and knees. The motion was sickeningly fluid, a stark contrast to the jerky movements before. He was on all fours, his head still hanging low, his dark hair obscuring his face. Scrape. The sound of a knee dragging on the floorboards. He was coming for me. Scrape. Closer. My entire body was trembling. A sob was building in my chest. A desperate, high-pitched thing that I was fighting to keep down. I could smell the dust on the floor, see the individual fibers of the cheap carpet. I could hear the blood pounding in my ears, a frantic drumbeat counting down my last seconds. Scrape. He was just a few feet away. I could see his bare feet, the pale arch of his instep. He stopped. The silence stretched, tight and thin. Was he listening? Could he hear my heart? My ragged, terrified breathing. Scree. His hand shot out from under his body, landing on the floor just beyond the edge of the desk. The fingers splayed, pale and spider-like, inches from my face. A scream tore itself from my throat. A raw, ragged sound of pure terror. And in that same instant, the tension broke. Leo's body went limp. He collapsed onto the floor with a heavy, boneless thud, landing half on his side. He let out a huge, gasping breath, and his eyes flew open. They were his own eyes. Confused, frightened. What the hell?" he stammered, scrambling to sit up, rubbing his chest. "Jesus, Alex, what's wrong? I had the worst." His voice trailed off. My scream had died in my throat. I was still huddled under the desk, shaking, unable to process the sudden shift back to reality. It was a dream. It had to be a dream. A waking nightmare. I did this. My mind did this. You were... I started, my voice cracking. I crawled out from my hiding spot, my limbs aching. I was about to say it, about to try and explain the unexplainable, to rationalize the seizure and puppet-like movements and the thing in the mirror. But then I saw it, my scream, his gasp, our hot, panicked breath had fogged the surface of the old mirror. And on the cloudy glass, traced by a single fingertip, were 3 clear, sharp words. "It sees you." The morning light was an insult. It sliced through the grimy window, cutting a dusty gold rectangle onto the floor, a floor where Leo had collapsed just hours ago. A floor I had crawled on, convinced I was about to die. Sleep hadn't come, not for a second. We'd spent the rest of the night with the main room light on, sitting on our separate beds, staring at the mirror propped in the corner like a silent black tombstone. The words on the glass had faded as the fog of our breath evaporated, but they were burned onto the back of my eyelids. "It sees you." "This is bullshit," Leo said. His voice was raw. He was sitting on the edge of his mattress, hunched over, his face pale and blotchy. He looked like he'd been run over by a truck. "Bullshit?" I shot back, my own voice tight with a mix of leftover terror and fresh anger. "You were on the floor, Leo. On your hands and knees. You were coming for me." "I was having a nightmare, Alex." He dragged a hand through his messy hair, refusing to look at me, his eyes fixed on a crack in the floor. "A really bad one, that's all. You were up all night studying, you were stressed, you fell asleep and had one too. We freaked each other out." He pushed himself to his feet and started toward the small sink we shared, his movements stiff. "You probably sleepwalked? Wrote on the mirror yourself? It's the only thing that makes sense." He was rationalizing. He was building a wall of logic around the memory, brick by frantic brick, trying to wall it off so he wouldn't have to look at it. I wanted to scream at him, to shake him until his teeth rattled. He wasn't there when the reflection smiled. He didn't see himself turn into a puppet. As he turned on the tap, splashing cold water on his face, I saw him wince and rub his right wrist. A quick, unconscious gesture. He probably didn't even know he was doing it. I let it go. Arguing was pointless. The fear was a cold, hard knot in my gut, and I felt utterly alone with it. I swung my legs off the bed, my body aching as if I'd been in a fight. My head throbbed. I needed coffee. I needed to get out of this room. I stood up and my right hand brushed against the denim of my jeans. A sharp, stinging pain shot up my arm. "Ow, damn it!" I looked down. There, on the inside of my right wrist, was a thin red line. It wasn't a deep cut, but it was angry and raised, like a burn from a taut wire. I must have scraped it on the desk when I fell. I started for the door, then stopped. My brain, sluggish from exhaustion and fear, finally connected 2 dots. The sting on my wrist. The way Leo had just rubbed his own. It was a stupid, flimsy thought, but it was enough. "Wait a fucking second," I said. The words came out louder than I intended. Leo turned from the sink, a towel in his hands. "What now?" "Your wrist," I said, my heart starting to thump in a new, ugly rhythm. "The one you were just rubbing. Let me see it." A flash of irritation crossed his face. "Alex, for God's sake, drop it." "Let me see it, Leo." I took a step toward him. My voice didn't sound like my own. It was flat and hard. He let out an exasperated sigh, the kind he used when I complained about his turpentine smell, and held out his right arm. "Fine. See? Nothing. Happy now?" I grabbed his arm before he could pull it back. My stomach dropped. There, on the pale skin of his inner wrist, was a mark. Not just any mark. It was a thin, red line, angry and raised. It wasn't similar to mine. It was identical. "What the hell?" he breathed, his own eyes finally focusing on the scratch. He looked from his wrist to mine, which I was now holding up next to his. The two lines were perfect mirror images of each other. The same slight curve near the thumb, the same length, ending at the exact same point on our skin. The wall of logic Leo had been building came crashing down. I saw it happen in his eyes. The denial evaporated, replaced by the same cold, crawling horror that I'd been living with all night. "No," he whispered, pulling his arm away as if it were on fire. "No, that's not possible." We stood there in the middle of the room, the hostile morning light illuminating the two impossible wounds. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. The sounds from the hallway, a distant laugh, a door closing, seemed to come from another world. "My dream," I started, my throat dry. I was in the dark. It was cold. A hand came out of the mirror. Leo's head snapped up, his eyes were wide. "And it grabbed you." It wasn't a question. "It grabbed my wrist," I said, my blood running cold, my right wrist. It was trying to pull me in. "Into a hallway," Leo finished, his voice barely a whisper. A long, dark hallway. The walls were wet, and it smelled like dirt, like an open grave. Every word was a hammer blow. He was describing my nightmare. Or I was describing his. We had dreamed the same dream. We had woken up with the same wound. We stared at each other, the unspoken truth hanging in the air between us. This wasn't a prank. It wasn't stress. It wasn't a coincidence. We were trapped. Together. Our eyes both darted to the corner of the room, to the source. The mirror stood there, impassive. In the daylight, it just looked like a piece of junk. Old wood, murky glass. But we knew what it was. We knew what was inside it. It felt like a predator, sleeping in the sun, waiting for nightfall. "Get it out," Leo said, his voice shaking but finding a new hardness. "Get it out of here. Now." Action was a relief. Anything was better than standing there, waiting. We didn't even discuss it. We both moved at once, grabbing the mirror by its heavy wooden frame. The wood was cold, colder than the room's air, a deep, unnatural chill that seemed to suck the heat right out of my fingers. It was heavier than it looked, a dead weight. We shuffled sideways, wrestling it through the narrow space between my desk and his bed. "To the storage closet," I grunted, my knuckles scraping against the doorframe. "Down the hall. We'll just leave it there." "We should smash it," Leo said, his breath coming in ragged puffs. "No, don't. Just get it out." I didn't want to break it. I was terrified of what might come out if we did. We finally maneuvered it out of our room and into the empty, fluorescent-lit hallway. We propped it against the cinder block wall opposite our door. For a single, fleeting second, I felt a wave of relief. It was out. The source of the infection was removed from our space. We were safe. We both stepped back, breathing heavily. Slam. The sound was like a car crash next to my ear. It wasn't a creak and a click. It was a violent, explosive bang of solid wood hitting the frame. Our dorm room door, which we had left wide open, had slammed shut with impossible force. There was no draft, no wind. The air in the hallway was dead still. We froze, staring at the closed door. "What was that?" Leo whispered. I didn't answer. I already knew. I lunged for the doorknob. I turned it. Nothing. It was locked. "It's locked," I said, my voice rising in panic. I rattled it, the metal clacking uselessly. "Leo, it's locked from the inside. That's impossible." He pushed me aside and tried himself, twisting the knob back and forth with frantic energy. "The deadbolt. It's thrown. You can't throw it from the outside without a key." We both threw our shoulders against the door. It was like hitting a wall of solid concrete. We slammed into it again and again, our grunts echoing in the empty hall. People would hear. Someone would come. But the hallway remained silent. It felt like the whole dorm, the whole world had vanished, leaving just us and this impossible solid door. "My phone! My keys! Everything's in there!" I yelled, beating my fist against the unyielding wood. We were locked out, stranded in the hallway in our t-shirts and jeans. Defeated, we stumbled back from the door. My chest was heaving, my shoulders screaming in protest. A hopeless, desperate laugh bubbled up in my throat. We were trapped. My eyes fell on the mirror, still propped against the opposite wall. It stared back at us, and I saw our reflections. Us. Two terrified, exhausted students, standing in a generic dorm hallway in front of a closed wooden door. But that's not all I saw. The reflection wasn't a perfect copy. In the world behind the glass, the reflection of our door wasn't closed. It was wide open. I grabbed Leo's arm, my fingers digging into his bicep. "Look," I croaked. He followed my gaze. His breath hitched. We were looking through the mirror and into our room. Our beds, our desks, the dirty clothes on the floor, all of it exactly as we'd left it. And in the center of the reflected room, standing in the space we had just occupied, was a figure. It was a tall, lean silhouette, a smudge of absolute blackness that seemed to drink the light around it. It had no face, no features, just a vaguely human shape made of pure shadow. It was perfectly still. As we stared, paralyzed, the shadow thing slowly raised one of its long, thin arms. It lifted its hand, and it waved. A slow, simple, friendly little wave. A gesture of greeting, from its world to ours, from inside our room. It hadn't locked us out. It had locked us in. With it, the janitor's name was Mr. Henderson. He was old, smelled faintly of pine cleaner and stale cigarettes, and he didn't ask any questions. He just took his master key, jammed it into our lock, and turned. The deadbolt made a loud metallic clunk as it slid back. The door swung open. "Kids these days," he muttered, shaking his head as he shuffled away down the hall. "Always locking yourselves out." If only he knew. We stood there for a moment, staring into our room. It was exactly as we'd left it. My unmade bed, Leo's pile of dirty clothes, the faint scent of his turpentine, the window letting in that same hateful morning light. There was no shadow man. There was nothing. In the hall, the mirror leaned against the wall, its glass dark and stupid-looking. It looked like a piece of junk someone had left for the trash. We didn't talk. We just acted. A silent, frantic agreement passed between us. Leo grabbed one side of the mirror, and I grabbed the other. The wood was still cold. Its chill was a living thing. We half-dragged, half-carried it back into the room. We shoved it into the deepest corner, behind Leo's desk, and I grabbed the spare blanket from the top of my closet and threw it over the top. Out of sight, out of mind. A lie we were both desperate to believe. Leo went to his desk and turned on his laptop. The click of the keys was the only sound. I went to mine. We had a pact of silence. We wouldn't talk about it. We couldn't. If we talked about it, it would be real. So we pretended. We pretended it was a shared hallucination, a stress-induced episode. We had classes to attend, a life to live. The day was a blur. I sat through a 2-hour lecture on cellular biology and didn't hear a word. My mind was a loop of a locked door and a waving shadow. Every reflection I passed, a puddle on the sidewalk, a darkened phone screen, the window of a campus bus, made my heart jump into my throat. I couldn't go back to the room for lunch. I couldn't face Leo. I couldn't face the blanketed thing in the corner. So I went to the library. The third floor, deep in the stacks, where the silence was thick and smelled like old paper. I found an empty carrel, dumped my books, and tried to focus. My head ached. I rubbed my temples, closing my eyes. A whisper slithered into my right ear. Leo's hiding something. My eyes snapped open. I looked left. Right. An undergrad a few aisles over coughed. A librarian pushed a squeaky cart in the distance. Nothing else. The sound had been so clear, so close, like someone was leaning over my shoulder. Just tired, I told myself. Hearing things. The place is full of little noises. I shook my head, trying to dislodge the feeling. The whisper had sounded like dry leaves skittering across pavement. He's getting kicked out of the art program. He's telling everyone he's fine. I stood up so fast my chair scraped loudly against the floor. A girl at a nearby table looked up and glared. My heart was a hammer against my ribs. I scanned the towering shelves around me. The aisles were canyons of shadow and silence. There was no one there. Absolutely no one. I was just freaking out. It made sense that my exhausted brain would cook up something about Leo. The thing in the mirror had looked like him. Sort of. My phone buzzed on the table. A text from Leo. My gut twisted. I didn't want to look. I forced my hand to pick it up. Leo, where are you? My fingers trembled as I typed back. Me, library, you? The 3 little dots appeared instantly. Leo, room. Just got back. Hey. Weird thing. I was talking to Sarah from bio. She said she heard you failed the anatomy midterm. I dropped the phone. It clattered onto the desk. My blood went cold. I hadn't told anyone. Not a single person. Not my parents, not my advisor, and definitely not Leo. I got the results back last week, saw the big red 48% at the top of the page, and buried it deep. It was a failure I couldn't stand to admit, even to myself. Sarah from bio, I barely knew her. She sat 3 rows ahead of me. We had never spoken. There was no way she could know. There was no way Leo could know. I grabbed my bag, stuffing my books inside with clumsy, shaking hands. I had to get back to the room. I had to look him in the eye. A new kind of fear was taking root. It wasn't the fear of a shadow or a nightmare. It was cold and sharp and pointed right at the one person I was trapped with. How did he know? Achai. When I got back, he was sitting on his bed, sketching furiously in a notebook, his back to me. He didn't look up when I came in. The air in the room was heavy. I could feel the blanketed mass in the corner, a dark void pulling all the warmth toward it. Hey, I said, my voice sounded thin. Hey, he mumbled back, not turning. The pencil in his hand moved with a frantic scratching sound. I stood by the door, my backpack still on. Your text. Yeah. Weird, right? He still wouldn't look at me. Guess people talk. No, I said. People don't talk, Leo. I didn't tell anyone. He finally stopped sketching. He put the pencil down, very slowly, and turned to face me. His eyes were dark, ringed with exhaustion, but there was something else in them. A glint of suspicion that mirrored my own. What are you saying, Alex? I'm saying, how did you know? My voice was getting louder. How the hell did you know I failed that test? Sarah told me, he shot back, his own voice rising. Jesus, what's wrong with you? You think I hacked your student account or something? You think I give a shit about your anatomy grade? The anger felt real, but the seed was planted. The whisper in the library. He's hiding something. And now he knew my secret. It was a trade. A sick exchange of information I didn't agree to. The thing, whatever it was, wasn't just trying to scare us. It was trying to turn us against each other. The ensuing silence was worse than the shouting. We didn't speak for the rest of the evening. We ordered separate pizzas. We ate on our own beds, staring at our laptops, pretending the other person didn't exist. But every time he shifted, every time he coughed, I felt a jolt of alarm. My eyes kept darting to the corner, to the shapeless form under the blanket. I could feel it watching us. I could feel it feeding on the silence. Night came. We didn't discuss a sleeping arrangement. There was nowhere else to go. We just turned off the lights. The darkness was absolute. I lay on my back, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. I could hear Leo breathing across the room. A slow, steady rhythm. Or was it too slow? Was he pretending to be asleep? Hannah. Then it came again. A whisper, right beside my ear, so close I could feel a puff of cold air. It's him. It was always him. He's jealous of you. He wants you gone. I squeezed my eyes shut. My fists clenched the sheets. No, not real. Across the room I heard Leo shift suddenly in his bed. A sharp, jerky movement. The springs of his mattress groaned. I held my breath. Was he getting up? Was he coming over here? My mind raced. The whisper in the library. The text message. The new whisper in the dark. It was painting a picture, piece by piece, of a threat that wasn't a monster in a mirror, but a jealous roommate who wanted me out. Or worse, I had to know what he was thinking. Leo? I whispered into the blackness. A long pause. Then his voice, tight and strained. What? You hear that? I asked. Hear what? He said too quickly. A lie. I could hear it in his tone. He's lying, the whisper hissed in my mind. He's part of it. He's making you think you're crazy. I heard a voice, I said, pushing myself up on my elbows. It said you think I'm a burden. The words hung in the air. A test. A trap. In the darkness, I could just make out his silhouette as he sat up. He was silent for a long, long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was a dead, flat thing that terrified me more than any scream. That's funny, he said. Because the voice I heard, it told me you were the one who was jealous. It told me you were going to hurt me. We stared at each other's vague shapes in the suffocating dark. The trap had sprung. It hadn't told us the same lie. It had told us different lies, perfectly tailored to slash the last thread of trust between us. We weren't allies anymore. We were two suspects in a locked room, and the killer was whispering in both our ears. Exhaustion finally won. A bone-deep weariness that dragged me down under the weight of fear. I don't remember falling asleep. I just remember the darkness behind my eyes giving way to a different kind of darkness. I was in our room, but it was wrong. The walls were slick with something dark and wet, like the hallway in the first nightmare. The only light came from the mirror, propped up where we'd left it, but the blanket was gone. It glowed with a sick green luminescence, and Leo was standing in front of it. "Leo?" I said, my voice echoing the wrongness of the place. He turned. It was his face, his clothes, his messy brown hair. But it wasn't him. The eyes were black pits. And when he smiled, his mouth stretched too wide, the corners crinkling up toward his ears, showing too many teeth. "You're a burden, Alex," the Leo thing said, its voice a chorus of the whispers I'd been hearing all day. The scratching sound of dry leaves. A failure. A parasite. It took a step toward me. Its movements were wrong. A puppet on a string, its limbs jerking at odd angles. It lunged. I threw my hands up to defend myself, and it grabbed my left arm. Its grip was like iron. Its skin was cold, so cold it burned. It twisted my arm back, a spike of pain shooting up to my shoulder. "I'm going to get rid of you," it hissed, its face inches from mine. I screamed and thrashed, a guttural sound of pure terror. I woke up choking. I was in my bed, tangled in my sheets, my whole body trembling. My left arm throbbed with a phantom pain. Across the room, Leo was screaming too, a choked, terrified yell. He shot upright in his bed, gasping for air, his eyes wide and wild. We both scrambled for our bedside lamps, fumbling in the dark. The lights flickered on at the same time, flooding the room with a harsh yellow glare. We looked at each other, panting. "You saw it," I gasped. "You were in my dream." "No," he breathed, clutching his own face. "You were in mine. You weren't you. You were attacking me." He lowered his hand from his cheek. On his skin, just below his right eye, were 3 thin, parallel lines. Red and raw against his pale face. They looked like he'd been clawed. My eyes fell to my own body. I looked at my left arm, the one the Leo thing had grabbed and twisted. A dark, ugly bruise was already forming on my bicep, a perfect 5-fingered handprint. We stared. From the scratch on his face to the bruise on my arm. From the dream to reality. The impossible had happened again. He had hurt me. I had hurt him. We looked at each other. The shared terror was gone. The alliance was gone. All that was left was the cold, sickening poison the whispers had poured into us. I saw it in his eyes. He wasn't looking at a fellow victim anymore. He was looking at his attacker. I knew because I was looking at mine. His voice was a broken whisper, the last thread of our trust snapping in two. Did you do this to me?" We said nothing. The question hung in the air between our beds, thick and poisonous. "Did you do this to me?" My bruised arm throbbed. The skin above his eye was an angry red trident. The light from the lamps felt hot and yellow and sick. He didn't wait for an answer. I didn't have one. Leo swung his legs out of bed. He didn't look at me. He just walked to his desk, pulled on a pair of jeans from the floor, and grabbed a hoodie. He put on his shoes. The sound of him tying the laces was the only noise in the room. Each pull of the string was a verdict. Guilty, guilty, guilty. He grabbed his keys and his wallet and walked out. The door clicked shut behind him. It wasn't a slam. It was quiet. Final. I just sat there, in the middle of my bed, the sheets twisted around my legs. The room was huge now. The space where he was supposed to be was a hole. My eyes went to the corner, to the blanket draped over the mirror. It felt like it was breathing. I didn't sleep again. How could I? I watched the numbers on my phone click over. 3:47, 4:12, 5:30. At some point, the sun came up. The hateful light seeped through the blinds again. He didn't come back. I had a 9 a.m. class. I didn't go. I had a 10:30. I didn't go to that either. I couldn't leave the room. I was afraid to leave it empty. Afraid of what might happen. Afraid of what I'd find if I came back. I was also afraid to stay. The walls felt like they were listening. Around noon, my bladder was screaming. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I put on yesterday's clothes. They smelled like sweat and fear. I opened the door a crack. The hall was empty. Just the usual hum of the overhead lights. A door closed somewhere down the way. Normal sounds. I walked out, leaving my door unlocked. I didn't want to get stuck out here again. The bathroom was 4 doors down on the right. I went in, did my business, splashed cold water on my face. The guy in the mirror looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes. Pale skin. He looked haunted. He was. I walked back out. The door to my room, 212, was just ahead. I put my hand on the knob, and then I stopped. Wait. I looked at the number plate again. 222. That wasn't my room. My room was 212. I must have walked too far. Dumb. My brain was fried. I shook my head and turned back. I must have passed it. I walked past 220, past 218, past 216. The next door was 210. I stopped dead in the middle of the hallway. That wasn't right. Where was 214? Where was 212? I turned around. The bathroom door was gone. In its place was just another numbered dorm room. 224. Okay. Don't panic. I was on the wrong floor. That had to be it. I must have gone up or down a flight of stairs in the 2 seconds it took to leave the bathroom. No, that was stupid. The elevators were at the end of the hall. The stairs were next to them. I hadn't gone anywhere near them. I tried to think. My heart started a low, heavy drumbeat against my ribs. Okay. So I'll just walk to the end of the hall, find the elevator. Reset. I started walking. The hallway stretched out in front of me. The cheap brown carpet, the white walls, the identical wooden doors. Left, right, the numbers were all wrong. 238, 240, 252. Then it jumped back down. 206, 204. It made no sense. I kept walking. The silence was getting louder. The hum of the lights seemed to be drilling into my skull. My footsteps sounded too loud. Slap, slap, slap on the carpet. I reached the end of the hall. There was no elevator, no stairwell, just a blank wall, a blank white wall. My blood went cold. I turned around. The hallway I had just walked down seemed longer now, way longer. The doors at the far end were small, like I was looking through the wrong end of a telescope. This is not happening. This is not real. I squeezed my eyes shut. Wake up, Alex. Wake up. I took a deep breath. I opened them. Nothing changed. The blank wall was still in front of me. The impossibly long hallway was still behind me. I decided to try a door. Any door. I grabbed the knob of the nearest one, 208, and turned. It was unlocked. I pushed it open. I looked into another hallway, identical to the one I was standing in. Same carpet. Same lights. Same numbered doors stretching into the distance. I slammed it shut. My breath came in ragged gasps. I tried the door across the hall. 207. I threw it open. Another fucking hallway. Panic, cold and sharp, sank its teeth into me. I was in a dream. It was happening again. But this time, I was awake. Or was I? I slapped my own face, hard. The sting was dull, distant, like hitting a piece of meat. It didn't work. Nothing worked. A sound. A little girl's giggle. It echoed down the hall. It sounded like it was right behind me, and 100 miles away, all at once. My head snapped around. The long hallway was empty. The giggle came again, louder this time. It bounced off the walls, the ceiling, the floor. It was everywhere. The walls started to change. The clean white paint began to drip. It ran down in thick, slow, black trails like tar. The air grew thick and smelled of wet dirt and decay. The solid floor beneath my feet started to feel soft, spongy. With every step, my shoe sank a little, making a wet, sucking sound. The giggling turned into a full-blown laugh, high and mocking. I had to get out. I started running. I yanked open doors as I ran past them. Hallway, hallway, hallway. They were all the same, a maze of endless corridors. The black stuff was dripping from the ceiling now, landing on my hair and shoulders. It was cold, oily. Help! I screamed. The sound was swallowed by the wet walls. It didn't even echo. Somebody help me! The laughter got louder right in my ear. I slipped on a patch of the black ooze and fell, landing hard on my hands and knees. The carpet was slimy. It felt like I'd fallen into a swamp. And then I saw him, at the very end of the hall. A figure. It was small in the distance, but I knew who it was. The messy hair, the hoodie. "Leo!" I yelled. My voice cracked. Relief and fear crashed together inside me. He turned. His face was white with terror. He was yelling something, but I couldn't hear the words. Just his mouth opening and closing. He was pointing, not at me, at something behind me. I didn't care. I scrambled to my feet. "Leo, wait!" I started running toward him. He was my only way out, my only piece of reality in this madness. I ran as hard as I could, my feet sinking and sliding in the sludge. The black tar dripped into my eyes, and I wiped it away frantically. He was getting closer. 20 feet. 10 feet. He reached a hand out to me, his eyes wide. His mouth formed my name. "Alex!" I reached for him. Our fingers were about to touch. Crack! The sound was sharp and final, like 1,000 panes of glass shattering at once. The floor, beneath Leo's feet, wasn't there anymore. It just broke away into a perfect, dark square. 1 second he was there, hand outstretched. The next, he was gone. Swallowed by a blackness so complete it didn't seem real. He didn't even have time to scream. He just vanished. The hole remained, a neat, black rectangle in the middle of the ruined hallway. All noise stopped. The laughter, the dripping, everything. There was only silence, a dead, heavy silence that pressed in on me. I stood there, my hands still outstretched, staring at the empty space where my roommate used to be. "Leo!" The scream ripped out of my throat, raw and animal. It was a sound of pure loss. I woke up yelling his name. I was on the floor of my room, tangled in my bedsheet, which must have come with me when I fell out of bed. The sun was high in the sky, blasting through the blinds. The room was real, solid. My desk. His desk. The blanketed mirror in the corner. My heart was trying to beat its way out of my chest. I scrambled to my feet, my eyes flying to his bed. He was there. He was lying on his back, on top of the covers, still in his jeans and hoodie from the night before. He must have come back while I was gone. For a second, relief washed over me so powerfully my knees went weak. It was just a dream. A horrible, vivid dream. He was fine, but he was too still. His face was pale, a waxy, unnatural white. His lips had a bluish tint. His chest wasn't moving. "Leo?" I whispered. My voice was a dry croak. I took a step closer, then another. He looked like one of those anatomical dummies in the biology lab. Lifeless. "Leo?" I said, louder this time. I reached out a trembling hand and touched his shoulder. He was cold. So cold. Not just cool to the touch. It was a deep, penetrating cold, like a body that had been left outside in winter. I grabbed him, shaking him hard. "Leo, wake up! Come on, man! Wake up!" His head lolled on his neck. His eyes were closed. "No!" I yelled, shaking him harder, my own panic turning into a frantic, pleading rage. "Wake up!" His eyelids fluttered. They slowly opened. The eyes that looked up at me weren't seeing me. They were wide and dark and staring at a horror I couldn't see. His whole body started to tremble, a violent, bone-rattling shudder. A low, gurgling sound came from his throat. His lips moved, forming words without sound at first. Then a whisper, a dry rasp of air that smelled like the grave. I was falling, he choked out, his eyes locked on the ceiling. Couldn't breathe. It was so dark. He took a shuddering, painful gasp, like his lungs were remembering how to work. I kept falling, I recoiled, snatching my hands back as if I'd touched a live wire. I stared down at him, at his cold skin, at his terrified eyes, the bruise on my arm, the scratch on his face. That was from a dream where we saw each other, where we heard each other. But this time, I had watched him die, and he had felt it. The silence was worse than the screaming. It was a thick, heavy thing that filled the space between his bed and mine. Leo was wrapped in 3 blankets, but he was still trembling, a deep seismic shudder that came from his bones. His skin, where I'd touched it, was still cold. Not just cool, cold. The kind of cold that doesn't belong in a living body. I kept falling, he said again, his voice a dry rustle of leaves. He was staring at the ceiling, at a geography of terror only he could see. There was nothing, just black. And the pressure, my lungs. He coughed, a wet, rattling sound. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. My own dream, the endless hallway, the giggling, the black tar. It felt distant now, a movie I'd watched. But his experience, he had lived it. I had watched him die, and he had felt it. The cold in his skin was the echo of that abyss. The mirror, I said. The words came out of my mouth before I even thought them. They felt like the only solid thing in the room. Leo's eyes shifted from the ceiling to me. The fear was still there, but something else moved behind it. A glint of anger. Of focus. The mirror, he agreed. His voice was stronger. We didn't need to discuss it. We didn't need a plan. There was only one thing to do, one place to go. The place this all started. Getting there was a blur. We threw on clothes. I grabbed my keys. The hallway outside our door, 212, was just a hallway. Normal. The numbers were in order. The bathroom door was where it was supposed to be. The blank wall at the end of the hall was gone. It was real. This was real. But the dream felt more real. The drive was silent. The morning sun was bright and hurt my eyes. Every traffic light seemed too red, every green light too short. My hands were slick on the steering wheel. I kept glancing at Leo. He was huddled against the passenger door, staring out the window, his reflection a pale ghost against the glass. We found the street, an old brick row of forgotten businesses, a laundromat with faded lettering, a boarded-up diner, and in the middle. "There," Leo said, his voice flat. I pulled over. I looked at the storefront. It wasn't right. "Wait," I said. "This isn't... it is, but..." When I bought the mirror 2 weeks ago, the shop had been cluttered but charming. A little bell had jingled when I opened the door. The old man behind the counter had been quirky, telling me stories about half the junk in his store. The place had smelled of old paper and wood polish. Now, it looked like a tomb. The paint on the sign Curios and Knickknacks was peeling away in long strips, revealing dark, rotting wood underneath. The windows were gray with a film of grime so thick you couldn't see inside. A piece of cardboard was taped over a crack in the glass. It looked like it had been there for years. "This is the place," Leo insisted, his jaw tight. "I know it is." "I know," I said. "It just looks older." We got out of the car. The air here felt heavier. The smell wasn't paper and polish. It was damp earth and mildew. There was no bell on the door. It just scraped open with a low groan. The inside was dark. A single bare bulb hung from a frayed cord in the center of the room, casting long, dancing shadows. Dust motes, thick as insects, swarmed in the weak light. The charming clutter was gone. Now it was just piles of junk covered in gray sheets, looking like bodies in a morgue. A figure stirred behind a tall counter in the back. The old man. He looked up, and his face was different too. The quirky smile was gone. His skin was sallow, his eyes sunken and frightened. He looked 100 years old. "We're closed," he rasped, his voice thin and papery. "We bought a mirror here," I said, stepping forward. The floorboards creaked under my feet. "A big one, ornate frame, 2 weeks ago." The old man's eyes widened, a flicker of sheer panic. He shook his head, too quickly. "No, not here. You're mistaken." He started fussing with a pile of old newspapers on the counter, not looking at us. "I don't sell mirrors. Bad luck." "Don't lie to us," Leo said, his voice hard. He walked up to the counter, planting his hands on it. "We know we bought it here. We need to know where you got it." The old man flinched back from him. "Go away," he whispered. "Please. Just leave." His eyes darted away from us. Just for a second. A quick, terrified glance toward a dark corner of the shop behind a stack of old chairs. I saw it. Leo saw it. It was all the confirmation we needed. There was something in that corner he didn't want us to see. "What's over there?" I asked, my heart starting a low, heavy drumbeat against my ribs. "Nothing," the old man squeaked. "Just junk. Please, boys, you need to go, now. I didn't listen." Leo tried to grab my arm. "Alex, wait." But I was already moving. I pushed past the counter, my shoulder bumping a stack of dusty books that sent them tumbling to the floor. The sound echoed in the dead air. "Stay away from there!" the old man shrieked. It wasn't a warning. It was a plea. I shoved the chairs aside. They were lighter than they looked. The corner was dark and cold. There was a large, rectangular patch of lighter wallpaper on the back wall. It was the exact size and shape of the mirror. It had hung right here. My eyes scanned the floor. Under the empty space, half hidden by a rolled-up rug, was a small wooden box. Dark wood, no bigger than a shoebox. It had a tarnished brass latch. I knelt down. The floor was cold. "Don't," the old man whimpered from behind me. "For God's sake, son, don't open it." His terror was a physical thing. It made the air crackle. It made my fingers tremble as I reached for the latch. I flicked it open. It made a small click. I lifted the lid. The smell hit me first. Old, brittle paper and something else. Something dry and faintly metallic. Like dead hair. The box was full of them. Dozens of old Polaroid pictures. And underneath them, a tangled, matted clump of human hair. Different colors. Brown, blonde, black, red, all mixed together. My breath hitched in my throat. I picked up the top photograph. It was a young couple. They looked like students, maybe a little older than us. They were standing in what looked like a dorm room, arms around each other, smiling at the camera. They looked happy. A small handwritten note on the bottom edge read, "Jess and Mike, 08. "What is this?" Leo whispered, kneeling beside me. He looked from the photo to the old man, who was huddled behind his counter, watching us with wide, weeping eyes. I reached for another photo. A different couple, this one in what looked like a small apartment. Sarah and Ben, 97, happy, in love. I shuffled through them. More couples. All young, all smiling. A whole history of happiness trapped in a box. Then I went back to the first one, Jess and Mike. I held it in my fingers, staring at their smiling faces. And then it happened. The image, it moved. It wasn't like a video. It was like the photograph itself was having a seizure. Mike's smile twisted, pulled down at the corners into a silent scream. His eyes went wide, the pupils shrinking to pinpricks of black terror. Jess's face began to melt, her features drooping and running together like hot wax, her mouth a gaping, dark O of horror. The background of the dorm room bled into black streaks, like the hallway from my dream. I dropped the photo as if it had burned me. It fluttered to the floor, landing face up. The image was normal again. Just two smiling kids. "Did you see that?" I gasped, my voice shaking. "I saw it," Leo breathed. His face was as white as his had been on the bed. I scrambled back, away from the box, my heart hammering against my ribs. My eyes were locked on the pile of photos. A collection of stolen moments. a trophy case. The old man finally broke. A sob tore from his chest. "It's not a mirror," he choked out, words tumbling over each other. He was shaking his head, tears streaming down his wrinkled cheeks. "I tried to get rid of it. I tried to burn it. It always comes back." "What is it?" Leo demanded, his voice a low growl. The old man looked at us, his eyes filled with a terrible ancient guilt. "It's a trap," he whispered. "It finds a place with two, a pair. And it feeds. It doesn't reflect you. It copies you, in the glass, and then it starts to hunt. It takes a little at a time, until there's nothing left." We just stared at him. The air was gone from the room. "It takes the pairs," he sobbed. "It takes them." We ran. We didn't say a word. We just turned and bolted. Out of the corner, past the counter, through the groaning door, and back into the too bright sunlight. We threw ourselves into the car, and I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking so hard I could barely fit the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life, and I slammed the gas, tires screeching as we peeled away from the curb. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I was afraid of what I might see. The drive back was a high-pitched ringing in my ears. The world outside the car didn't seem real. The people on the sidewalks, the other cars, they were all props in a world that didn't exist anymore. The only real thing was the two of us, inside this metal box, and the thing that was waiting for us back in our room. We burst through the dorm door and slammed it shut, locking it. We stood there for a second, backs against the wood, chests heaving. The room looked normal, safe. Just our two beds, our two desks, the sunlight streaming through the blinds, and the blanketed shape in the corner. Leo walked slowly toward his bed, his movements stiff, robotic. I stayed by the door, watching him. He stopped. He was staring down at his mattress. "Alex," he said. His voice was very, very quiet. I walked over. My legs felt like lead. I looked where he was looking. There, on his pillow, was a single, small object. It was yellowish-white, with a dark root clotted with dried blood. A human tooth. My blood went cold. My gaze snapped from the tooth on his pillow to my own bed, and I saw it, resting on my pillow, exactly where my head would be. A small, coiled lock of dark brown hair. My hair. It was tied together with a single strand of what looked like blonde hair. Jess and Mike, Sarah and Ben, Alex and Leo. The trap wasn't just in the glass anymore. It was in our room. It had left us souvenirs, promises of what was to come. My blood went cold. My gaze snapped from the coil of hair on my pillow to the white speck on Leo's. A tooth. A lock of hair. Jess and Mike, Sarah and Ben. The photos in the box. Now us. Alex and Leo. My stomach turned over, a hot, greasy flip. Souvenirs. The words screamed in my head. Leo looked at me, his face a mask of disbelief and pure, animal fear. The panic we'd felt in the car, in the shop, was nothing. A joke. This was real. This was happening in our room, our space, our beds. There was no thought, no plan. Just a single, unified, primal instinct that shot through both of us at once. "The mirror!" I choked out. Leo was already moving. He grabbed the wooden desk chair, the one I'd been sitting at moments before trying to study. He didn't say a word. He just hoisted it up, the muscles in his arms drawn tight. His face was a snarl of rage. He was going to kill it. He yelled, a short, sharp bark, and swung the chair with all his strength. It flew across the small room. It spun once, end over end, a clumsy weapon against an impossible enemy. It was going to hit the glass dead center. I flinched, expecting the sound of shattering, 1,000 pieces of bad luck exploding onto the floor. Thud. A muffled, dead sound. The chair didn't shatter the glass. It hit the surface and just stopped. It bounced off, tumbling to the floor with a pathetic clatter of wood on cheap carpet, like it had hit a wall of solid concrete. Leo stared, breathing hard. I stared. The mirror was flawless. Not a scratch, not a crack, not even a smudge. Our reflections stared back at us, two pale, terrified kids in a dorm room. The blanket that covered it had slid halfway down, revealing the top half of the ornate frame and the perfect, gleaming surface. It looked like it was mocking us. "My turn," I said, my voice low. I grabbed my own chair. It felt heavy. I put my back into it, a grunt of effort tearing from my throat as I heaved it at the glass. I aimed lower, for the corner, hoping for a weak spot. Thump. The exact same sound. The chair rebounded, spinning away and crashing against the wall next to the door. We stood there, panting, in the wreckage of our own failed assault. The two chairs lay on the floor like dead soldiers, and the mirror stood in the corner, half-draped, utterly unharmed. The thing inside it was safe. It was untouchable. The adrenaline drained out of me, replaced by a cold, heavy dread. We couldn't fight it. We couldn't break its home. We were trapped in here with it. "We can't sleep," Leo said. The words hung in the air, a death sentence. "Whatever happens, we cannot go to sleep." I nodded. "Coffee. Whatever we've got. We stay up. We wait for the sun." The night became a siege. We brewed a pot of coffee that was thick enough to stand a spoon in. It tasted like hot tar, but the bitterness was a welcome jolt. We drank it black. When the pot was empty, we moved on to the energy drinks Leo kept in the mini-fridge. The sickly sweet taste coated my tongue. The room filled with the hum of the small fridge and the sound of us swallowing, pacing, trying to fill the quiet. 1 o'clock. 2 o'clock. The campus outside was dead. No drunk students yelling, no cars driving by, just silence. I sat at my desk, my back to the mirror. I could feel it there. An unseen weight in the room. I tried to read a textbook, but the words were just black squiggles on a white page. They wouldn't form thoughts. I kept looking at the clock. The red numbers burned into my eyes. 2:47. 2:53. My eyelids felt like they had weights on them. The caffeine had stopped working. My body was screaming for rest, a deep, primal need that overrode the fear. I saw Leo across the room, his head nodding, his eyes staring blankly at the wall. "Leo," I said. My own voice sounded thick, distant. "Stay up." He jerked, his eyes focusing for a second. "I'm up. I'm up." He wasn't. Neither was I. The fear was still there, a cold stone in my gut, but my body had started to shut down. I couldn't fight it anymore. My head drooped. I tried to lift it. It was too heavy. My cheek found the cool wood of the desk. Just for a second, I told myself. I'll just rest my eyes for a second. Darkness took me like a wave. I wasn't in the room anymore. I was on my feet, running. The air was cold and damp, smelling of concrete and rust. I knew this place. The fire escape stairwell at the end of our hall. Steel steps, cage-like walls. I was pounding down them, my sneakers slapping against the metal. I didn't know what I was running from. I just knew I had to get down, get out. My foot came down wrong on a step. It wasn't a slip. It just landed wrong. An impossible angle. There was a wet, tearing sound. A sickening pop that I felt all the way up my leg. White-hot pain exploded in my ankle. It was absolute, complete. It swallowed every other thought. My leg gave out from under me and I tumbled forward, my scream catching in my throat as I crashed down the last few steps, my body a tangle of limbs. I lay at the bottom, on the cold concrete landing, gasping, staring at my foot. It was twisted, bent at an angle a foot should never be. The pain was a living thing, a fire burning inside my bones. I blinked, tears of agony blurring my vision, and I was standing at the top of the stairs again. My ankle was fine. The pain was gone. I was just standing there, heart hammering, breathing hard. What the hell? Was that a dream inside the dream? But the urge was still there. Run, get down. Get out. Hesitantly, I took the first step, then another. I started jogging, then running, faster this time, driven by a new, more urgent fear. I knew what was coming. I counted the steps. 10. 11. 12. My right foot hit the 13th step. The same one. The world went sideways. The same wet pop. The same blinding, all-consuming fire in my ankle. I fell again. The same ugly tumble, the same crash onto the concrete below. I lay there, clutching my leg, a real scream tearing out of my throat this time. The pain was identical. I remembered it perfectly. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying to wake up. I opened them, top of the stairs. "No," I whispered. My voice was a dry croak. No, 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 no. I was trapped. I was in a loop. I looked down at my ankle. It looked fine. It felt fine. But I knew what would happen. I tried to be clever. I turned around and started to climb down backwards, holding the railing. I felt my way down, step by step. I made it past the 13th step. A wave of relief washed over me. I'd beaten it. I took the next step down. My hand slipped on the railing. I lost my balance, my body twisting back around. My right foot slammed down hard to steady myself. On the 13th step, crack! The pain, the fall, the scream, landing. Top of the stairs. This time, I didn't try to run. I sat down. I was going to slide down on my ass, like a little kid. I pushed off, my jeans scraping on the metal. I went down 1 step, 2 steps, 3. I was laughing, a crazy, sobbing sound. I was going to beat it. The world tilted. I was on my feet again, stumbling forward. My momentum carried me onto the 13th step. The pop, the fire, the fall. It happened again, and again, and again. I lost count. 20 times? 30? Each time, the pain was just as real, just as sharp. Each time, the reset was instantaneous. My mind started to fray. The stairwell was my entire universe. The pain was the only truth. There was no escape. There was no waking up. There was only the fall. And then, on the next reset, something was different. As I stood at the top of the stairs, my body already trembling in anticipation of the inevitable, I saw something new. At the very bottom of the stairwell, on the concrete landing where I had crashed so many times, a figure stood. It was just a shape. A tall, thin silhouette of perfect blackness. No face, no features. Just a person-shaped hole in the world. It wasn't chasing me, it wasn't threatening me, it was just watching. Like a spectator at a show. A show designed for it. I froze at the top of the stairs, my feet rooted to the spot. The urge to run was gone, replaced by a new, colder terror. The figure lifted a hand. It didn't wave, it just held it there, and then a voice echoed up the stairwell. It was not male or female, it was just a voice. Calm, quiet, amused. 3. My legs started moving against my will. A slow, dreadful march down the stairs. 2. I tried to stop. I tried to scream. No sound came out. My body was a puppet. I was walking toward my own torture, step by step. 1. My right foot landed on the 13th step. My eyes flew open. I was in my room. A scream, raw and ragged, tore from my lungs. I was on the floor, next to my desk, tangled in my chair. Daylight streamed through the blinds. But the pain wasn't gone. It was in my leg, my real leg. I pushed myself up, scrambling back, and looked down. My right ankle was a mess. It was swollen to nearly twice its normal size, a grotesque knot of flesh puffing up over the side of my sock. A dark, ugly bruise was already spreading across the skin, a map of purple and black. I tried to put weight on it, and a fresh wave of agony, the same fire from the dream, shot up my leg. I collapsed back with a cry. It was real. The fall was real. The injury was real. A low groan came from across the room. My head snapped up. Leo. He was curled on the floor by his bed, his face pale and slick with sweat. He was clutching his left shoulder, his teeth gritted. "Leo?" I gasped. "What's wrong?" He looked at me, his eyes wide with a pain that mirrored my own. "My shoulder," he rasped. I think it's out." He moved his arm slightly and I saw it. The unnatural bump. The awkward, rigid angle of his arm. A clear dislocation. I stared at his shoulder, then back at my own swollen, useless ankle. At the 2 overturned chairs. At the half-draped mirror in the corner. silent and victorious in the morning light. The tooth and the lock of hair were just trophies. Appetizers. The trap wasn't just taking things anymore. It was breaking them. It was breaking us. The ER was too bright. The white lights hummed above, buzzing in a way that drilled into my skull. It smelled like bleach and sickness. Everything was clean and sterile and a million miles away from the filth in our heads. I sat on the paper-covered gurney, my foot propped up on a pillow. It was a balloon of purple and blue flesh. The pain was a steady, grinding throb. Across the room, a doctor was guiding Leo's arm. Leo's face was white, beaded with sweat. He bit down on a wad of gauze, his eyes squeezed shut. The doctor put a hand on his shoulder, another on his elbow, and gave a sharp, practiced pull. There was a wet, heavy pop. Leo screamed, a muffled sound through the gauze. I flinched, the noise echoing the sound from my dream. The fall. The crack. God, the fall. I could still feel it. There we go, the doctor said, his voice calm. That's back where it belongs. He started wrapping a sling. He was an older guy. Tired eyes, a salt and pepper mustache. He came over to me next, picking up my chart. Alex, is it? He asked, not looking at me. He gently probed my ankle. A jolt of fire shot up my shin. I hissed through my teeth. Yeah. He looked from my ankle to Leo in his new sling, then back to my ankle. He finally looked at my face. His eyes weren't tired anymore. They were sharp. So let me get this straight. You were coming down the fire escape. Yeah, we were just messing around, I said. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. We'd rehearsed it in the Uber on the way here. It was the only thing that made sense. Messing around, he repeated. He didn't sound like he believed it. And you, he pointed his pen at me, slipped and fell, resulting in a severe sprain and a possible hairline fracture. We'll know more after the X-ray. He then gestured to Leo. And he fell at the exact same time, trying to catch you, and dislocated his shoulder. That's right, Leo said from across the room. His voice was shaky. The doctor's gaze held mine. He wasn't buying it. Not for a second. Strange. The contusions on your ankle are odd, almost like impact from multiple angles. And a dislocation like that usually comes from a direct blow or a wrenching motion, not just catching a falling person. He let the silence hang in the air. A question. I just stared back, my heart hammering. What could I say? A thing in a mirror broke us in our sleep. They'd put us in a different kind of ward, a padded one. It was dark, I said, my voice flat. We felt weird. The doctor held my gaze for a moment longer, then sighed, breaking eye contact. He scribbled something on my chart. All right, let's get you to X-ray. You kids be more careful. Dorm stairwells aren't a playground. We left 3 hours later, armed with crutches for me, a sling for Leo, and a fistful of prescriptions for painkillers that made the world feel slow and fuzzy. The sun was up, but it brought no comfort. The campus looked the same. Students walked to class, laughing, listening to music. They were in a different world than we were. Back in the room, the 2 overturned chairs were still on the floor, and in the corner, the mirror stood, half draped in its stupid blanket. It looked exactly the same. Innocent. Victorious. We righted the chairs, the silence in the room heavy, punctuated only by the clatter of my crutches. We knew we had to sleep. The painkillers were dragging my eyelids down. The exhaustion was a physical weight. But the thought of closing my eyes, of going back there. We can't, I said, slumping onto my bed. We can't do it again. We don't have a choice, Alex, Leo said. He was trying to open a water bottle one-handed. We're hurt. We're exhausted. It's going to happen. He was right. I knew he was right. I swallowed 2 of the pills. Maybe they'd knock me out so deep the dreams couldn't find me. A stupid hope, but it was all I had. I lay back, my swollen ankle propped on a pillow, and stared at the ceiling. The fear was a cold lump in my stomach, but the medication was a warm, heavy blanket, pulling me under. My last thought was, please, not the stairs. Darkness. And then, the cold smell of concrete and rust. I was standing. My crutches were gone. My ankle didn't throb. I looked down. It was fine. Perfectly normal. I was at the top of the stairwell. My breath caught in my throat. No, the urge to run was there, a frantic electric current in my veins. Get down! Get out! But I fought it. I planted my feet. I wasn't going to run this time. I wasn't going to play its game. I was going to stand here until I woke up. A slow creak echoed from the bottom of the stairs. My eyes snapped down. The black silhouette was there, on the concrete landing. The person-shaped hole in the world. It was waiting, watching me. I stood my ground, my fists clenched so tight my knuckles were white. "No," I whispered into the cold air. "I'm not doing it." It didn't move. It didn't make a sound. It just stood there, a silent statue of pure night. Then, slowly, it raised its hand. The same gesture as before. But this time I saw it more clearly. It wasn't just a hand. There was something on its palm. Faint lines glowing like embers about to die out. They weren't letters, I knew. They were symbols, sharp and angular, etched into its skinless, black flesh. It held its hand out flat, an offering. A map. A message. What the hell? My mind reeled. This wasn't an attack. This was something else. My fear was still there, a wall of ice in my chest, but behind it, a sliver of confusion pushed through. Wait, something's not right. It wasn't threatening me. It was trying to show me something. I was so focused on its hand, I didn't see its head tilt. A gesture of impatience? I took a half step back. A reflex. A mistake. The air shattered. A sound like 1,000 windows breaking at once tore through the stairwell. A deep, guttural roar echoed up from the silhouette, but it wasn't a roar of malice. It was rage. It was frustration. It sounded like an animal trapped in a cage, furious that I couldn't understand. The world around me dissolved. The steel railings, the concrete steps, they cracked and exploded outwards into a storm of jagged, black shrapnel. I threw my arms up to cover my face, stumbling back. The pieces hung in the air for a second, a cloud of deadly debris before they all shot towards me. There was no up or down, no escape. The thing's frustration had become a physical attack. I ducked and weaved, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. A sharp piece of what used to be a wall sliced across my arm. I felt a sting, but there was no time for pain. I was scrambling, falling through a void of flying daggers. This was insane. It was worse than the fall. I was being torn apart. It wasn't trying to kill me. I felt that, somehow. It was like it was screaming at me, trying to beat a message into my thick skull. It was desperate. I tripped over nothing, falling backward through the black space. A large, triangle-shaped piece of concrete, sharp as a spearhead, flew directly at my face. Time slowed. I could see the rough texture of it, the way it spun lazily through the air. It was aimed right between my eyes. I was going to die. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. My brain flashed. Not a memory. A vision. Sudden. Bright, yellowed paper. A bold, black headline. Gas leak in Oak Creek dorm claims 2. Underneath, a grainy black and white photo of my building. Our building. The article was short. It mentioned a faulty heater. An overnight leak. 2 sophomore students, their names blurred and unreadable, found in their beds. The image lasted only a second. Then, the shard was inches from my eye. I screamed and threw myself sideways. My eyes flew open. I was in my bed. The scream was real, caught in my throat as a strangled gasp. Daylight. Faint gray light was filtering through the blinds. I was drenched in sweat, my t-shirt sticking to my skin. Heart pounding, I frantically checked myself over. My arms, my face. No cuts, no shards of concrete. I looked at my ankle, still propped on the pillow. It was still swollen, still bruised. The injury from the first dream was there, but the new one, the slice on my arm, was gone. Relief washed over me, so powerful it made me dizzy. It was just a dream. A new, more chaotic dream, but it wasn't real. I sat up, the room spinning for a second. Leo was asleep in his bed, his breathing deep and even. He looked peaceful. Then, I smelled it. A strange smell. Faint, but definitely there. It was sweet. Sickly sweet, like cheap perfume mixed with something else. Something chemical. I sniffed the air again. It prickled the back of my throat. I couldn't place it. It wasn't a smell I knew. My head was fuzzy from the painkillers. Was I imagining it? Rocking, but the alarm bell from the dream was still ringing. A frantic, clanging bell in the back of my mind. The newspaper headline. Gas leak! I looked around the room. The cheap university furniture. The posters on the wall. The mirror, covered in its blanket. Everything looked normal. The scent was faint. Almost unnoticeable. I could be wrong. It could be anything. Cleaning supplies from the hallway. Someone's air freshener. But the feeling, the gut-wrenching panic from the dream, it was still here. It was in the room with me. The entity wasn't trying to hurt me. It was trying to warn me. The fall. The broken ankle. It was trying to wake me up. The shattering world. The flying debris. It was screaming at me. I looked over at Leo, sleeping soundly. He wasn't stirring. He wasn't smelling it. My gaze drifted to the bottom of our door. There was a small gap between it and the floor. Was the smell coming from there? From the hall? From the hall? Or was it already in here with us? Rayete. My eyes shot to Leo. He was a lump under a thin blanket, the sling a dark shape on his chest. The sickly sweet smell hung in the air, a cloying chemical perfume. It wasn't strong. It was subtle, easy to miss, easy to ignore. That's how it gets you. Gas leak. The headline from the dream flashed behind my eyes, bright and stark. 2 sophomore students found in their beds. Leo! My voice was a dry rasp. No response, just the deep, even sound of his breathing. Too even, too deep. Panic, cold and sharp, stabbed me in the gut. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, forgetting about my ankle. Fire shot up my leg as my foot hit the floor. I hissed, collapsing back onto the mattress, my head spinning. Crutches! I needed the crutches. I grabbed them, hauled myself up, and hobbled the few feet to his bed. The sweet smell was stronger here. It clung to his blanket. Leo, wake up! I shook his good shoulder. Nothing. He just shifted, a low mumble in his throat. This wasn't right. The painkillers weren't supposed to be this strong. Leo! I shook him harder, my voice cracking. Wake the hell up! His eyes fluttered open. They were hazy, unfocused. Wah! The smell, Leo! Do you smell it? I was practically shouting in his face. That sweet smell! He sniffed, his face a mask of confusion. Alex, what are you talking about? He couldn't smell it. Or the drugs had dulled him too much to notice. The dream, Leo. I had it again. It wasn't the stairs. It was different. The thing, it wasn't trying to hurt us. It showed me something. I was rambling, the words tumbling out. A newspaper. An old one. It said 2 kids died in the storm. A gas leak. Leo pushed himself up on his good elbow, the sling bunching at his neck. A dream, Alex. It was just a dream. No! I grabbed my laptop from my desk, nearly dropping it as I fumbled back to my bed. My hands were shaking. I slammed it open. The screen flared to life, illuminating our faces in the gray morning light. We have to look. We have to check. I navigated to the university's web archive. The Wi-Fi felt agonizingly slow. I typed Oak Creek Dormitory into the search bar. My finger hovered over the Enter key. And then I saw it. Below the search bar, the list of recent searches. Oak Creek Dorm Accident. Oak Creek Gas, 1998. My blood ran cold. The cursor blinked, patiently. My breath hitched. I hadn't typed that. I had just opened the computer. I looked at Leo. His face was pale, his eyes wide, fixed on the screen. Did you? I started. He shook his head, his good hand gripping his blanket. No, I haven't touched it since yesterday. Something had. My heart hammered against my ribs. A frantic, trapped bird. Without thinking, my finger clicked on the second search term. Oak Creek Gas, 1998. The search results loaded. A few links to maintenance records, building blueprints, and the third link down, from a digitized archive of the campus newspaper. The headline was a gut punch. I didn't even need to click it. The preview text was enough. Tragedy at Oak Creek. Faulty heater leads to 2 deaths. The words blurred. I clicked the link. The page materialized. A grainy, scanned copy of an old newspaper page. And there it was. The headline. Bold and black. Just like in my dream. The article was short. It described how 2 sophomores, roommates, were discovered by a resident advisor after they missed 2 days of classes. The cause of death was determined to be carbon monoxide poisoning from a faulty, outdated gas heater in their room. A silent, odorless killer. Not sweet, odorless. So what was the smell I was picking up? Was it even real, or was my panicked mind inventing it? My washali asiris ba call. Then my eyes fell on the picture next to the article. It was a black and white photo of 2 young men, probably a yearbook photo. They were smiling. One had dark, messy hair and a sarcastic tilt to his mouth. The other, standing slightly behind him, had a broader build and a kinder, more reserved expression. I stared. Leo leaned closer, his breath catching in his throat. It wasn't a perfect match. Of course not. It was 20 years ago. Different hairstyles, different clothes. But the resemblance? It was sickening. The way the taller one, the one with the kind eyes, had his head angled slightly, just like Leo does when he's listening to someone. The way the other one, the sarcastic one, had a familiar glint in his eye. A glint I saw in the mirror every damn morning. It was like looking at a ghost echo of ourselves. A past life photograph. Holy shit, Leo whispered. The sound was thin in the tense quiet of the room. My gaze drifted from the photo back to the text of the article. I scanned the lines, my brain struggling to process the information. It mentioned the students, David Gallo and Mark Peterson. It mentioned the grief on campus. And then, at the end of the 3rd paragraph, a single, devastating detail. The students were residents of room 413. I looked up from the screen. My eyes darted across our room, to the cheap wooden door, to the small, metal-plated number tacked onto it. 413. We were in the room. We weren't just in the same building, we were in the exact same room. The bed I was sitting on could be the same bed one of them died in. The floorboards Leo was about to step on were the same ones. This wasn't a haunting, it was a recording. A terrible event imprinted onto a physical space, and we had stumbled right into the playback. The mirror. It wasn't the source, it was an amplifier, an antenna, picking up the residue of a tragedy, the psychic screams of 2 kids who went to sleep and never woke up. The silhouette in the stairwell, the fall, the broken bones. It wasn't a monster trying to kill us, it was a warning. It was David and Mark, screaming across 2 decades of time, trying to bash us awake before we shared their fate. We have to get out, Leo said, his voice urgent. He swung his legs out of bed, his face grim. Now. Go where? I said, the reality of our situation crashing down. Leo, I can barely walk. You've got 1 arm. We tell the RA we think our room is haunted by the ghosts of a gas leak from 1998. They'll call the campus shrinks, not an exorcist. He was right, and we both knew it. We were trapped. The exhaustion was a physical entity in the room with us, pressing down on our eyelids. The painkiller still swam in our veins, a warm, treacherous tide pulling us under. We had to stay awake, no matter what. The next few hours were a special kind of hell. We turned on every light. We opened the window, letting the cold November air bite at our skin. The sweet smell vanished, replaced by the scent of damp leaves and car exhaust. We put on music, loud and jarring. We drank the stale coffee left in my pot from the day before. We talked about anything and everything, our voices strained, forcing a brightness we didn't feel. Every time a silence stretched for more than a few seconds, the image of that newspaper photo would rise up in my mind. But you can't fight biology. By late afternoon, the yawns started. Our sentences slurred. My head felt like it was full of cotton. Leo's good eye was red-rimmed. We were losing. I can't, Leo mumbled, his head lolling against the wall he was propped up on. Just 5 minutes, Alex. No, I said, shaking my head to clear it. No, we can't, man. Remember the photo. But it was no use. I watched his chin dip to his chest. His breathing deepened. He was gone. and I was alone with the ghosts. My own eyes burned. The music from the laptop sounded distorted, distant. My body screamed for rest. The fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach, but the exhaustion was a bigger monster. "Just close them for a second," a voice in my head whispered. Just for a second. It was the last conscious thought I had. The world didn't go black. It faded. I wasn't on the stairs. I was in our room. But it wasn't our room anymore. The metal band posters were gone, replaced by a faded print of a Monet painting and a corkboard covered in photos and ticket stubs. The messy pile of my textbooks was replaced by a neat stack of chemistry books on the desk. It was their room. Room 413, 1998. And they were there. The two boys from the photo stood in the middle of the room. They weren't silhouettes. They were solid, real. They wore jeans and faded university sweatshirts. They looked just as tired as I felt. There was no malice in their eyes, only a deep, profound sadness and a terrifying urgency. The one who looked like me, David, raised his hand. He pointed a shaky finger, first at me, then at where Leo was sleeping in the dream space. Then he pointed back at himself and his friend Mark. He shook his head slowly, a single, desperate gesture. "Don't become us." My throat was tight. I couldn't speak. Then the other one, Mark, the one who echoed Leo, stepped forward. He looked me right in the eye, his own filled with a frantic plea. He opened his mouth, and I saw his jaw work, his throat strain. He was trying to scream something at me, but no sound came out. Only silence, pure, absolute silence. He tried again, his face contorting with the effort. He mouthed the words, big and slow, begging me to understand. 2 words. "Don't sleep." A jolt, like an electric shock, shot through me. My eyes snapped open. I was in my bed. The lights were on. The cold air still poured through the open window. It was real. I sat bolt upright, my heart a jackhammer in my chest. Across the room, Leo jolted awake at the same instant, letting out a sharp gasp. Our eyes met. He'd seen it too. "The room," he started, his voice a hoarse whisper. "The boys." I finished. We were awake. We were alive. A wave of relief, so intense it was nauseating, washed over me. For a moment, we just sat there, breathing hard in the silence, the ghost of their warning echoing in our minds. Then Leo's gaze dropped to the floor beside his bed. His face went slack. "Alex," he said, his voice barely audible. I followed his gaze. In the thin layer of dust on the worn wooden floor, something was written. It wasn't there before. I would have seen it. We both would have. The letters were traced by a single fingertip. The script was shaky, uneven, desperate. It wasn't a warning about the gas. It wasn't a cry for help. It was 3 simple words. He's coming, not it. He. The words hung in the space between our beds. He's coming. Not written in blood. Not scratched into the wood. Traced in the fine gray dust on the floor. A child's scrawl, but the message was not from a child. My breath seized in my lungs. Leo made a choked sound. A half sob, half gasp. My mind, which had just accepted the idea of ghosts, now rejected it and spun in a new, more terrifying direction. Ghosts don't write warnings. They are the warning. This was something else. A human hand had traced those letters. "He," Leo whispered, his voice cracking. "He who?" My brain was a frantic scramble of faces. The grumpy RA from the second floor? The delivery guy who always looked at the student mail a little too long? That quiet janitor? The one with the dead eyes who pushed his cart through the halls late at night? Paranoia flooded me, hot and sickening. Everyone was a suspect. Everyone was a mask. "I don't know," I said, and the words felt like sand in my mouth. But someone was in here, while we were asleep. The thought was a physical violation. Someone had stood over us, had watched our chests rise and fall, had listened to our sleeping breaths, and then had knelt down on the dirty floor to leave their message. My skin crawled. We weren't just haunted, we were being hunted. Leo fumbled for his phone on his nightstand, his one good hand shaking. Call the cops, Alex, right now. And say what? I shot back, the words harsher than I intended. My leg throbbed, a dull, angry pulse. Tell them a ghost rode on our floor? They'll think we're high. They'll send us to the campus counselor. We were trapped. The story was too insane. Nobody would believe us until it was too late. Suddenly, a piercing shriek ripped through the building. W-E-E-E-E-O-O-O, we-O-O-O, the fire alarm. Both of us flinched violently. It was a deafening electronic scream. My heart hammered against my ribs, trying to beat its way out of my chest. Red lights flashed on the ceiling detector, plunging our room into a bloody, strobing nightmare every second. What the hell now? Leo yelled over the noise. Was this it? Was this him? A way to get everyone out of the building? To flush us out into the open? I grabbed my crutches, my mind racing. Where do we go? Down the stairs? The same stairs from the dream? And then, as abruptly as it began, it stopped. The siren cut off mid-shriek. The red lights died. The sudden silence was so absolute it was louder than the alarm had been. It pressed in on my eardrums. We were left in the cold, gray light of the room, our own ragged breathing the only sound. Down the hall, a door creaked open. Someone mumbled, "Stupid system." A door slammed shut. They were going back to bed. They thought it was a malfunction, a glitch. I knew it wasn't. It was a test. To see if the alarms worked, or to see if someone had disabled them. And then, the smell. It wasn't in the room. It was in my memory. The faint, sweet, chemical smell from before. The one Leo couldn't detect. My mind connected it to the newspaper article. Carbon monoxide. The gas leak. The silent, odorless killer. But the ghosts had tried to warn us. David and Mark had tried to push us out of a death they couldn't escape. So the message on the floor, "He's coming," it wasn't about them. It was about him, the one who started the fire alarm, the one who maybe, just maybe, had something to do with the gas leak. "Leo," I said, my voice low and urgent, "the gas. The heater from 1998. They replaced the whole system after that, Alex. It's in the article." "Are you sure?" I pressed. "Are you completely, 100% sure they replaced the pipes in this whole goddamn crumbling building? That a contractor didn't just cap off the old line and call it a day?" I didn't wait for an answer. I had to know. I pushed myself up on the crutches. Every movement sent a jolt of pain up my leg, but the adrenaline was a hot fire, burning it away. "Where are you going?" Leo asked, his face pale. "Basement," I grunted, hobbling towards the door. "Gotta check the utility room." "Alex, wait! You can't go alone! You can't come with me!" I shot back, glancing at his sling. "Just lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone, I mean it." He nodded, his jaw tight. The hallway was empty. Cold. The other residents had dismissed the alarm and returned to their sleep. Fools. I moved as fast as I could, the rubber tips of my crutches squeaking a rhythmic, desperate beat on the linoleum floor. The elevator was ancient. I didn't trust it. It had to be the stairs. Going down was its own special kind of hell. Each step was a controlled fall, my good leg, my arms, and the crutches taking all the strain. The stairwell was dim, lit by single, caged bulbs. The concrete walls felt like a tomb. The ghost of my fall here was a cold spot on the back of my neck. But the fear of that was nothing compared to the new fear. The fear of a person, of a plan. The basement door was heavy steel. It groaned open into darkness. I fumbled along the wall until my fingers found the light switch. A long, fluorescent tube flickered on with an electric hum, casting a sterile, buzzing light over a concrete cavern of pipes and boilers. The air was cool and smelled of damp earth and rust. I followed the main corridor, my crutches echoing in the vast space. Signs on the walls pointed to various utility closets. Electrical. Water. And finally, gas. The door to the gas utility room was unlocked. My blood ran cold. It shouldn't be unlocked. I pushed it open. It was a small, cramped space, a tangled jungle of pipes coming out of the concrete floor and snaking up the walls. A large manifold with several shut-off valves was mounted on the back wall. Each valve was painted red, with a tag indicating which wing of the building it supplied. I found the one labeled East Wing Floors 3 to 5. And I saw it. The valve wasn't fully closed, it was open. Just a crack. A tiny, almost imperceptible gap. Not enough to flood the rooms in minutes, but enough to leak slowly, silently, over hours. To let the gas build up while we slept. To make it look like another tragic accident. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was how it was being held in place. Tied to an adjacent pipe, pulled tight to keep the valve from being shut completely, was a dirty, knotted shoelace. My stomach dropped. This was no accident. This was deliberate, calculated. Someone had set a trap. They had rigged a slow, silent death for us and used a piece of trash to do it. Who? Why? The questions hammered at me, but one answer screamed louder than the rest. The ghosts. David and Mark. I stumbled back out of the room, my mind reeling, and leaned against the cold concrete wall, trying to breathe. It all clicked into place. A horrifying, perfect, crystal-clear picture. The mirror wasn't an evil portal. It was an antenna, a receiver for their fear, their energy. The silhouette in the stairwell, it wasn't trying to push me. It was trying to stop me, to hold me, to break my bones if it had to keep me from going back to that room. The shared nightmare wasn't a curse. It was a goddamn fire alarm from the other side. A desperate, screaming, psychic message. The broken arm, the twisted ankle, they weren't injuries from a monster. They were wounds from a rescue mission. David and Mark weren't haunting us. They were trying to save us. They were screaming across 2 decades, using the only tools they had, fear and pain, to jolt us awake before we shared their fate. Before we went to sleep and never woke up. The message on the floor. He's coming. It wasn't the ghosts. It was a warning about the one who was coming, the same one who rigged the gas valve, the one who had done this before. A sudden, jarring thunk echoed from above. Then another. My head snapped up. It was the sound of the main building door closing. Heavy. Final. I had to get back. Now. I shoved myself off the wall and began the clumsy, frantic journey back to the stairs. My lungs burned. My legs screamed. I didn't care. The stairwell felt 10 times longer going up. I hauled myself up each step, my arms trembling with the effort. 1st floor. 2nd floor. I heard it then, a sound that froze me in place. Footsteps. Not mine. Not the squeak of crutches. Heavy steps. Slow. Deliberate. Coming up the stairs from the ground floor behind me. They weren't rushed. They were confident. Methodical. Thump, thump, thump. The sound of work boots on concrete. My heart stopped. He was in the building. He was on the stairs. I was trapped between him and my room. I forced myself to move faster, choking back a sob of panic. My crutches scrambled for purchase. I couldn't make a sound. 3rd floor. The footsteps were closer now. They reached the 2nd floor landing. They didn't stop. They kept coming. Thump, thump, thump. He was coming for room 413. I reached my floor, panting, fumbling for the handle on the stairwell door. I burst into the hallway, a mess of sweat and terror, and hobbled towards our room. "Leo!" I hissed, rattling the locked doorknob. "Leo, open up!" The lock clicked. I threw the door open, stumbled inside, and slammed it shut, turning the deadbolt just as a colossal boom plunged the entire building into absolute darkness. The power was out. Not a flicker. A total, sudden blackout. Not even the emergency lights in the hall came on. He had cut the main power. We were blind. We were trapped. The footsteps were in our hallway now. Steady. Unhurried. They knew exactly where they were going. "Alex, what the hell is happening?" Leo's voice was a terrified whisper in the dark. "Shut up," I breathed, pressing my ear to the door. I could hear the scuff of his boots on the linoleum, getting closer. My hand flew to my mouth to stifle my own breathing. He was right outside our door. The footsteps stopped. Silence. A thick, heavy silence. He was there. Standing. Listening. Waiting. My entire body was a single, rigid muscle. I could feel Leo's terror radiating across the room. This was it. The door was about to splinter, but it didn't. Instead, a faint light began to glow from the other side of the room. I risked a glance over my shoulder. It was the mirror. It was shimmering with a soft silver light, like moonlight on water. It wasn't reflecting our dark room. It was showing something else. The image sharpened, solidified. I was looking at our hallway, from the outside, like a security camera. In the ghostly light of the mirror, we saw him, a large man, a silhouette against the faint light from the stairwell window down the hall. We couldn't see his face, but we saw what was in his hand. He raised it slowly. It was long-handled, with a heavy, blocky head, a sledgehammer. The mirror was showing us our death, standing on our doorstep, and he was about to knock. My mind went blank. The world collapsed into a single, silent image in the glowing mirror. A man, a hammer, a door, our door. Alex. Leo's voice was a dead thing in the dark. Get the desk, I snapped, the words tearing out of me. Shock turned to pure animal instinct. Now! Help me with the desk! My order cut through his freeze. I dropped my crutches, hopping on my good leg, ignoring the lances of fire shooting up from my ankle. We grabbed the cheap particle board desk, our hands fumbling in the blackness. His one good arm, my one good leg. A pathetic defense. We slammed it against the door, the wood groaning in protest. The beds! I hissed. Drag them! We wrenched my mattress off its frame, then his. We piled them against the desk, creating a soft, useless barrier. It was insane. A sledgehammer would tear through it all in seconds. But we had to do something. The silence from the hallway was the worst part. It was a physical presence, a weight. He was out there, just standing, listening. He knew we were in here. He knew we were scared. He was enjoying it. Why wasn't he swinging? The question hammered in my brain, louder than any sledgehammer. What was he waiting for? My breath came in, ragged, burning gasps. My ear was pressed to the flimsy pile of bedding, trying to hear past the blood pounding in my head. I heard nothing, just the thick, suffocating dark. Leo was a statue of terror somewhere behind me, his breathing a quick, shallow wheeze. Minutes stretched into an eternity. 1 minute. 5. I don't know. Time dissolved. There was only the blackness, the silence, and the knowledge of the man on the other side of the wood. My muscles screamed, coiled tight with waiting for the impact. And then a light. Not from the hall, from the mirror. It flickered again, that soft, dead moon silver. It was the only source of light in the universe. I turned my head. My body still braced against our pathetic barricade. The image of the hallway wavered, then dissolved like smoke. A new picture formed. It was our bathroom, the small, grimy room with the cracked tiles and the moldy shower curtain. The camera view panned, jerky and unnatural, towards the small, frosted window above the toilet. It zoomed in. Past the window, I could see the thick, black iron of a drain pipe running down the side of the building. The image held on the pipe. A path. An escape. Leo, I breathed. Look. He crept closer, his eyes wide in the ghostly light from the mirror. He saw it too. The ghost of a man flickered into view inside the mirror. It was the same one from the stairwell dream, David or Mark, I didn't know or care. His face was a mask of silent, urgent warning. He raised a translucent hand. He pointed at the bathroom window. Then his hand moved, pointing to the drain pipe outside. He looked right at us, his mouth open in a scream we couldn't hear. He was showing us the way out, the way they couldn't take. He's helping us, Leo stammered, disbelief warring with terror in his voice. I know, I said. The realization from the basement slammed into me again. They weren't haunting us, they were saving us. This was the final alarm. We had to trust it, we had no other choice. Okay, I said, my voice low and determined. Okay, we go. Boom! The world exploded. The sound wasn't a noise, it was a concussion. It hit me in the chest, vibrated up through the floor, and rattled my teeth. The whole room shook. The desk jumped, slamming back into us. A spiderweb of cracks erupted across the door, visible for a split second in the afterimage of the mirror's glow. He was done waiting. Boom! This time, a chunk of the door blew inward. a spray of wooden shrapnel hitting our mattress barricade. Leo screamed, a high, thin sound. The game was over. He was coming in. "The bathroom! Go!" I yelled, shoving him. "Go!" He scrambled, tripping over a discarded crutch in the dark. I grabbed the other one and pushed myself up, my bad leg screaming in protest. The floor was a minefield of unseen objects. Behind us, the hammering was a relentless, thunderous drum beat. Boom! R-I-I-I-P, crack. The sound of the wood giving way, splintering, dying. We wouldn't have more than a few seconds. We stumbled into the tiny bathroom, and I slammed the hollow little door shut, fumbling for the flimsy lock on the knob. It was a joke. It wouldn't even slow him down. "The window!" I grunted, climbing onto the toilet seat. My ankle sent a blinding, white-hot signal to my brain, but I ignored it. I shoved at the small, square window. It was stuck, painted shut years ago. Crash! The sound of the main room door finally giving way. The heavy thump of our barricade being tossed aside. Footsteps. Inside our room. "Alex!" Leo's voice was pure panic. "I've got it!" I put my good shoulder into the window frame and shoved with everything I had. My muscles tore. The paint seal broke with a sharp crack, and the window screeched open just a few inches. Not enough. Thump. Thump. Heavy, slow footsteps crossing the room towards the bathroom. He wasn't rushing. I jammed my crutch into the opening and pried. The metal bent, but the old wood gave. The window slid open. Cold night air hit my face. We were 4 stories up. The drain pipe was right there, a thick, black stripe against the brick, maybe 2 feet from the window. It was slick with grime. "You first," I ordered Leo. "Your arm is bad, but your legs are good. Go, I'll be right behind you." He didn't argue. He climbed onto the toilet, squeezed his body through the narrow opening. His feet found the ledge outside. For a second, he just hung there, a silhouette against the faint city glow. Then his good hand shot out and grabbed the pipe. He was out. Boom! The first sledgehammer hit on the bathroom door. The cheap wood buckled inward. He was going to be through in 2 hits. "Alex, hurry!" Leo's voice was a desperate whisper from outside. I swung my good leg out, my body screaming. My bad foot got caught on the window frame, and a bolt of agony shot through me. I bit back a cry. I couldn't fall. I pushed off the toilet, dangling half out of the window, my hand scrabbling for a grip on the cold brick sill. My fingers were numb. The crutch was gone, fallen into the room. Crash! The bathroom door exploded inward. It flew off its hinges and slammed into the shower curtain. In the same instant, I threw myself outward, my hand slapping against the cold, wet metal of the drain pipe. My fingers locked on. My bad ankle slammed against the brick wall, and I saw stars. But I held on. I was out. I clung to the pipe, my breath tearing at my lungs, my whole body shaking uncontrollably. Leo was a few feet below me, his face a pale oval in the dark. We were alive. We were outside. Slowly, carefully, I pulled myself around the pipe to look back into our room, through the shattered bathroom doorway. The man stood there, a huge silhouette filling the frame. He was just breathing, the sledgehammer dangling from one hand. He didn't come to the window. He didn't even look towards it. He knew we were gone. It was like he didn't care. He turned. Slowly, deliberately. He walked out of the bathroom and into the center of our trashed room. He stopped and faced the one thing still glowing with its own eerie light. The mirror. He stood before it, his back to us. He wasn't looking at his reflection. He was looking into it. He raised his head slightly, and he nodded. A small, simple gesture. A confirmation. A thank you. From the silvery depths of the mirror, the ghostly face of the student, David, or Mark, materialized. It was clearer now. Calmer. Its expression wasn't one of warning anymore. It was smug. Satisfied. The ghost looked at the killer, and it nodded back. My blood turned to ice. My grip on the pipe almost failed. It all crashed down on me, a truth so horrifying it stole the air from my lungs. The mirror wasn't a warning system. It wasn't an antenna for psychic residue. The ghosts weren't trying to save us. They were hurting us. Every nightmare, every broken bone, every shred of hope they'd given us, it was all a lie. They hadn't shown us an escape route. They had driven us out of the pen and into the slaughterhouse. They weren't on our side. They were playing a game. And we were just the pieces, clinging to a wall 4 stories up, delivered and waiting for whatever came next. My fingers were claws, the filthy drainpipe tearing at my skin. Every muscle screamed. Below me, Leo was a shadow clinging to the same greasy lifeline. The cold air burned my lungs, a flimsy shield against the horror I'd just seen. The man in the room, the ghost in the mirror, their silent, horrifying agreement. Hurting us. The thought was a physical blow, not a warning, a setup. They hadn't shown us an escape. They had chosen our exit for us. We have to go down, I hissed, my voice a raw tear in the night. I can't, Leo choked out, his whole body trembling. Alex, I can't. You have to. There was no other choice. Waiting here was death. Going down was a chance. I ignored the white-hot agony in my ankle and began to slide. My hands burned. My jeans snagged on a metal bracket, ripping. I slid, caught myself, slid again. A controlled fall. My good foot hit the top of a dumpster in the alley below with a deafening bang. Pain shot up my leg, but I was down. Leo! Now! I yelled up, my voice swallowed by the narrow brick canyon. He hesitated for a second, a silhouette of terror against the sky. Then he followed, faster, more clumsily. He landed hard beside me, his bad arm held tight to his chest, his face a mask of shock. We didn't wait. We scrambled out of the alley and ran. We didn't look back, we just ran, past darkened storefronts and dead streetlights. The city was asleep, ignorant. Our ragged breaths were the only sound, the slap of our feet on the pavement a desperate drumbeat. My bad ankle was a ball of fire, but I didn't care. Pain was real. Pain was good. It meant I was awake. It meant I was out of that room. The blue and white glow of a police station sign a few blocks ahead was a lighthouse in the storm. We stumbled through the glass doors, 2 wrecks from a shipwreck, and collapsed against the front desk. A thick, bored-looking cop looked up from his computer, his face a mixture of annoyance and pity. Help you boys? My story came out in a torrent, a flood of disconnected words. Sledgehammer. Mirror. Ghost. Door smashed in. The cop just listened, his expression never changing. Leo stood beside me, mute, shaking, his eyes wide and vacant. Okay, the officer said, his voice slow and heavy, like he was talking to a child or a drunk. Let's back it up. You 2 had a nightmare? No! I slammed my good hand on the counter. He was in our room! A man with a fucking sledgehammer! He smashed the door down! We climbed out the window! The cop leaned back, eyeing my torn jeans, my filthy hands, Leo's 1,000-yard stare. He sniffed the air. You 2 been doing a little partying tonight? Some coke? Maybe something a little more creative? We're not on drugs, I ground out, my voice shaking with fury and fear. Check the room. Dorm C, room 412. The door is in splinters. You'll see, he was there. The mirror? I stopped. How could I even explain the mirror? The cop sighed, a long, suffering sound. He finally pushed a button on his radio. Carl, you and Roberts take a ride over to the university dorms. Got a couple of kids here saying there was a B and E. Room 412, Dorm C. Check it out. He looked back at us. Sit down over there. Don't touch anything. We sat on a hard plastic bench. The minutes crawled by. Every tick of the clock on the wall was an accusation. Leo stared at the floor. I couldn't stop my leg from bouncing, the motion sending jolts of pain from my ankle. They thought we were crazy. They thought we were high. But they would see. They would go to the room, see the shattered door, the trashed furniture, and then they'd believe us. They had to. It felt like an hour, but it was probably 20 minutes before the 2 cops, Carl and Roberts, came back. The first cop, the one from the desk, met them near the door. I watched them talk, their voices too low to hear. Carl, a tall, lanky officer, shook his head. Roberts, shorter and stout, just shrugged. The desk sergeant walked back over to us, his face now a solid mask of irritation. Okay, funniest joke of the night, you guys got me. What? I asked, standing up. The door is fine, he said flatly. Your room is fine. A little messy, but no smashed door. No sledgehammer man. Your RA says you're the only two registered to that room, so why don't you tell me what's really going on? My mind went blank. No, that's not possible. We were there. He smashed through it. The door is pristine, kid. Not a scratch on it. The mirror, Leo whispered, his first words since we got here. What about the mirror? The desk cop stared at him. What mirror? The RA said the university took all the wall mirrors out of those rooms years ago. Something about a fire hazard. There's no mirror in that room. No, 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 no. A cold dread, colder and deeper than anything I'd felt on the drain pipe, washed over me. I tried to focus on the cop's face, to read his expression, to see if he was lying, but a strange thing happened. I couldn't. His face was blurry. Not out of focus, just indistinct, like trying to remember a face from a dream. I could see the shape of it, the mustache, the tired eyes, but the details wouldn't lock in. They swam in my vision, just a generic cop face. We want to see it, I demanded, my own voice sounding distant. Take us back there. We'll show you. The cop sighed again. He clearly thought we were a waste of his time. Two college kids on a bad trip. Fine, let's go. Settle this once and for all. The ride back to the dorm was silent. I felt like I was moving through water. The world outside the car window seemed fake, a projection. We led the cops up the stairs, my heart pounding with a sick, desperate hope. Maybe they were wrong. Maybe they went to the wrong room. We got to 412. The door was closed. It was a solid slab of pale, ugly wood. There were no cracks, no splinters, no gaping hole where the hammer had hit. The cop named Carl pushed it. It swung open silently on its hinges. The room was exactly as the cop had said, messy, but whole. The beds were made. The desk was against the wall, a laptop sitting on it. No mattress barricade. No debris on the floor. And on the wall, where the mirror had been, there was nothing. Just a blank beige wall with two faded screw holes where something might have hung a long, long time ago. It wasn't real. None of it was real. My legs gave out, and I stumbled back against the hallway wall, sliding down to the floor. See? The desk sergeant said, his voice laced with finality. No B and E. Now I'm taking you two back to the station. We're going to figure out why you're wasting police time. Back at the station, the atmosphere had changed. We weren't victims anymore. We were nuisances. They put us in the same waiting area, but now the door was closed. A guard stood outside. We were being detained. Alex, what's happening? Leo's voice was a bare thread of sound. I don't know, I whispered back, my eyes scanning the room, looking for something that made sense. They landed on a small TV bolted to the wall in the corner. It was showing a local news report about a traffic jam on the interstate. The sound was off. I watched the screen, my mind numb. Cars. A reporter. The usual. Then it flickered. A burst of static like an old VHS tape. The image of the highway vanished. A new image took its place. A room. White walls. Fluorescent lights. A hospital bed. In the bed was a boy, maybe 10 or 11 years old, with pale skin and dark hair plastered to his forehead with sweat. Wires and tubes snaked from his arms to a bank of beeping machines beside him. He was asleep, but his face was tight, his eyelids fluttering. He looked like he was having a nightmare. I stared, my breath caught in my throat. I blinked hard. The image remained. The beeping of the machines on the screen was silent, but I could almost hear it. Leo, I said, my voice tight. Look at the TV. He lifted his head. His eyes widened. What the hell? He saw it too. I wasn't going crazy alone. The boy in the bed whimpered in his sleep, his head tossed on the pillow. He was trapped in whatever horror was playing out behind his eyes. A raw, protective instinct I didn't know I had flared up in my chest. Who is that? I screamed, jumping to my feet and pointing at the screen. WHO! Is that boy? The cops in the room turned. The desk sergeant, the guard, a couple of others. They looked at the TV. Then they looked back at me. Their faces were a mix of confusion and alarm. The desk sergeant started walking towards me. "Son, calm down. It's just the news." "No, look." I jabbed my finger at the screen. "Look at the boy, in the hospital." The cops looked. I saw their eyes scan the screen, and I saw the moment they dismissed it. To them, there was only a traffic jam. They were looking right at the boy, and they couldn't see him. And then, it got worse. On the screen, in his sterile white room, the boy's eyes snapped open. They weren't the groggy eyes of someone waking up. They were wide, alert, and filled with a terrifying intelligence. And they weren't looking around his hospital room. They were looking straight out of the television. Straight at me. At us. He saw us. A jolt went through me. An electric shock of pure impossibility. The cops were getting closer, telling me to calm down, to put my hands behind my back. I couldn't hear their words. All I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. All I could see were the boy's eyes. His mouth opened. No sound came out, but I read the words on his lips so clearly it was like he'd screamed them in my head. "Get out of Dawsa. My head." The world broke. It didn't fade. It shattered. The sound of the police station, the cop's voice, the ringing phone, stretched into a single metallic shriek that tore at my ears. The fluorescent lights above us blazed into white-hot suns, and the beige walls dissolved like sugar in water. The floor beneath my feet fell away. For a single vertiginous second, I was falling through a kaleidoscope of broken images. The sledgehammer, the mirror's silver glow, the cop's blurry face, the drain pipe. Then, silence. Stillness. I wasn't in the police station. I wasn't anywhere. I was standing in a void. A vast, featureless space of pure, empty white. There was no floor, no ceiling, just an endless expanse in every direction. Leo was beside me, his face a portrait of utter, catatonic shock. We weren't alone. 10 feet in front of us stood the boy. He wasn't on a screen anymore. He was here. He wore a thin hospital gown that looked enormous on his frail frame. He wasn't hooked up to any machines. He just stood there, looking weak and impossibly tired. He looked at me, then at Leo, his expression not of anger, but of frightened confusion. He spoke, and his voice was small, real, and echoing in the immense emptiness. "Who are you?" he asked, his eyes wide with fear. "Why are you in my dream?" The question hung in the white nothing. It was not a shout, not an accusation. Just a small, lost sound in a space with no echo. "Who are you? Why are you in my dream?" My mind refused to work. It was a jammed engine, gears stripped bare. 1 second, a police station, fluorescent lights, a cop's angry face. The next, this. An endless, blinding whiteness. No floor, no walls, just the boy and us. I looked at Leo. He was a statue. His mouth was slightly open, his eyes fixed on the kid, seeing nothing. He was gone. Checked out, I forced my gaze back to the boy. He was thin, wearing a hospital gown that swallowed his small frame. His feet were bare against the non-floor. He looked tired, so impossibly tired. "We..." "I don't know," I managed. The words felt thick and wrong in my mouth. "We were at a police station." The boy shook his head slowly, a gesture of profound weariness. "No. You weren't. You were in the hallway. Outside. Room 412. Then you were gone." He paused, his dark eyes searching my face. "My name is Min. Min." The name meant nothing. Room 412? The dorm? "We ran from there, a man with a sledgehammer." "There is no man," Min said, his voice flat. "Not a real one. There is no dorm. Not anymore. It's just a memory. This is all that's left." He gestured vaguely at the white expanse around us. "This is what happens when you're in a coma." The word hit me like a physical blow. Coma. The boy in the hospital bed on the TV. The frantic, silent beeping of the machines. It wasn't a flicker of static. It was a window. "You're the boy," I whispered. From the TV. I don't know about a TV, he said, confused. I'm here. I've been here a long time. After the car, after... He trailed off, his face clouding over. The dorm room was my favorite place. Before Dad, before he got sick. The mirror was my mom's. She used to say it showed you what you needed to see. My blood ran cold. The ghost in the mirror. The man with the hammer. Slices of a child's life twisted into weapons. Into a nightmare we had stumbled into. But how? How was any of this possible? This is crazy, I said, shaking my head, trying to force reality back into place. This isn't real. We're not in your head. Min looked at me, not with anger, but with a sad, simple certainty. Yes, you are. Don't you remember? The clinic. The sign said you could make some extra money. Clinic. Money. The words unlocked a door in my mind I didn't know was there. It wasn't a memory that flowed back. It was a flash. A single, sharp image. A cheap, gray waiting room. Fluorescent lights humming. The smell of disinfectant. A waiver form in my hands, the paper thin and cheap. Leo beside me, tapping his foot, impatient. $100 just to let them scan our brains? Easiest money ever, man. A brainwave synchronization study. That's what they called it. A new way to map neural pathways. They said we wouldn't feel a thing. Oh, God, I breathed. The floor didn't exist, but I felt it drop out from under me anyway. The study. They were trying to talk to me, Min explained, his small voice echoing in the vastness. Trying to wake me up, but their signal must have crossed with yours. You got pulled in. He looked from me to Leo, a new kind of fear dawning in his eyes. A fear of us. You're not supposed to be here. You're a mistake. A virus. Virus. The word changed everything. The air, which had been neutral, suddenly felt charged. The blank whiteness around us no longer seemed empty. It felt aware. It felt hostile. We weren't guests. We were intruders. An infection. And the dream was starting to fight back. It started at the edges. A flicker. The pure white began to fray, like burning film. A creeping, static blackness started eating away at the horizon. It wasn't just color. It was an absence of everything. A sound came with it, a low hum that vibrated in my teeth. The pressure in my ears began to build. What's happening? I yelled, the sound swallowed by the growing hum. It knows, Min said, his voice tight with panic. He took a step back from us. The dream. It knows you don't belong. The things you saw before, the woman in the mirror, the man with the hammer, they were just warnings. Like antibodies, they were trying to push you out. Hurting us. The thought came back, cold and sharp. They hadn't been trying to kill us. They had been trying to get us to leave on our own. Out the window. To the police. Back to our own world. But we didn't leave. We kept pushing deeper, and now the system was switching from defense to offense. Now it's starting a purge, Min whimpered. The blackness was advancing faster now, not just creeping, but rolling in like a tidal wave of nothing. The perfect white ground beneath our feet began to crack and crumble into the void. It was an island, and the ocean was rising. The space we had was shrinking. 10 yards. 5. The hum grew into a roar, a grinding, digital shriek that clawed at my brain. We have to get out! I grabbed Leo's shoulder and shook him hard. Leo, snap out of it! His head lolled. His eyes were wide, glassy, useless. There! Min screamed over the noise, pointing with a trembling finger. Across the rapidly shrinking platform of white, a new feature appeared. A rectangle of soft, warm light. It shimmered in the air, a doorway made of hope. It was maybe 20 feet away. A shoreline. That's the link! Min shouted. The way the scientists connect! If you can get to it, it will kick you out! It's the only way! My heart hammered against my ribs. An exit. A real exit. I half-dragged Leo towards it, my feet slipping on the crumbling white floor. The roaring static was deafening now, the black void just inches away from swallowing us whole. We were almost there. My hand was outstretched, reaching for the light. And then he appeared. He didn't walk into the space. He simply formed out of it, coalescing in front of the doorway, the sledgehammer man. He was bigger here. His shape was less defined, the edges blurring into the encroaching darkness. He was a pillar of grief and a rage-given form. The sledgehammer in his hand wasn't metal anymore. It looked like it was forged from solidified shadow, drinking the light from the doorway. He stood there, blocking our only escape. Min let out a sob. A raw, broken sound of a child who has seen his worst fear come to life one too many times. "Dad," he whispered, "he's guarding it. He won't let anyone in or out." The figure didn't move. It just stood there, an absolute negation of hope. The blackness was at our heels. The white island was now no bigger than a living room rug. We had seconds. My mind raced. Fight? How do you fight a memory? Run? There was nowhere to run. It was us or him. I looked at the figure, really looked at it, trying to find a weakness. Its head was tilted down. I couldn't see a face, just a dark cavity beneath the rim of a non-existent hood. It was a silhouette, a cutout. It was nothing. But the thing it was wearing, it wasn't just a random set of clothes, it was a jacket, a dark canvas work jacket, frayed at the cuffs, with a distinct, jagged tear on the left sleeve where it had caught on a nail 6 months ago. My jacket. The one I had worn to the clinic. The one that was probably hanging on the back of my chair in room 412 right now. The realization hit me with the force of a physical impact. My breath left my body. It wasn't Min's dad. Not entirely. The immune system, the dream's raw, mindless defense mechanism, didn't have a template for us, so it improvised. It pulled a file. It took the image of the invader, the signature of the virus, and it built its ultimate defense out of it. It was using my own reflection to kill me. The figure lifted its head. There was no face inside the hood, just a deeper, more profound darkness. And from that darkness, a shape began to form. My shape. It was looking right at me. And it began to raise the sledgehammer. There was no time to think. There was only the roar and the fall. The white ground beneath me wasn't cracking anymore. It was shattering. Huge, silent plates of nothing tilted and slid into the black void, disappearing without a splash. The island was the size of a car, then a table. The grinding static was a physical thing, a pressure crushing my skull. "Leo!" I screamed, but the sound was devoured. I hauled him by the collar of his shirt. He was dead weight, his feet dragging, his eyes wide and empty. He was gone. The sledgehammer man, the thing wearing my jacket, was all that mattered now. It stood before the door, the one patch of warm, stable light in this entire collapsing universe. It was me. My height. My build. But it was made of wrongness. The sledgehammer it held wasn't metal. It was a block of frozen night, sucking the light from the doorway into itself. The thing lifted its head. There was no face under the hood of the jacket. Just a deeper black, a hole in reality, and out of that hole, a face began to resolve. My face, stretched, distorted. A silent scream carved into my own features. My blood turned to ice. It knew me. It began to raise the sledgehammer, a slow, deliberate motion, an executioner's calm. The white ground buckled under my feet. We had maybe 5 feet of space left. Leo, me, and the boy Min huddled together as the universe ended around us. We were going to die. It was going to smash us into nothing, or the floor would give way and we'd fall forever. "No!" A child's shriek cut through the roar. It was Min. He was behind me, his small hands grabbing the back of my shirt. "Don't fight it. It's not just him." What the hell was he talking about? Not fight it? "It's made of fear," he screamed, his voice thin and sharp with terror. "My fear of my dad. But it's using you Your presence. You have to remember. Remember something stronger. Remember? My mind was a blizzard of panic. What could be stronger than this? Stronger than a monster wearing my face, about to crush my skull in front of a doorway to reality, all while the world dissolved into a black abyss? The idea was insane. The hammer reached the peak of its arc. It held there for a single, terrible second. The grinding noise of the void paused. An absolute, deafening silence fell. Then it swung. It didn't swing at us. It swung down at the floor in front of it. The hammer, a weapon of pure negation, struck the white surface. There was no sound of impact. There was only a ripple. A shockwave of pure force, silent and devastating, shot through what was left of our platform. It wasn't wind. It was a distortion, a wave of sickness that hit me like a solid wall. The ground beneath me vanished. My stomach launched into my throat. I was falling. The blackness rushed up to meet me. My hands shot out, scrabbling, and my fingers hooked onto the edge of the remaining platform. The rough, crumbling edge dug into my skin. I was dangling over the void, my legs kicking at empty space. The shockwave had torn away half of what little we had left. Leo had been thrown back, landing hard but safe on the remaining sliver. I wasn't so lucky. "Pull me up!" I yelled, my voice raw. My grip was slipping. The white material was like crumbling chalk. I looked up. Leo was still a statue, useless. But the sledgehammer man was moving. It took a slow step towards the edge. Towards me. It was going to finish the job. It raised the hammer again. "Remember!" Min's voice was a desperate prayer. Desperate. That's all I had left. My mind, fueled by pure adrenaline, latched onto the word. Remember. It was a stupid, pointless idea. A child's logic in the face of oblivion. But it was the only logic there was. I closed my eyes. I shut out the void, the monster, the crumbling ledge. I forced my brain to work, to go somewhere else. Anywhere else. A place that wasn't this hell. Sand. Hot sand under my feet. The sun beating down on my shoulders, warm and heavy. The sharp, clean smell of salt and sunscreen. The sound of a wave crashing, a cool spray hitting my ankles. My little sister, maybe 6 years old, laughing as she ran from the foam. She was holding a bright yellow bucket. My mom was calling my name, telling me not to go out too far. Happiness. A simple, stupid, perfect moment. It was so real, I could almost feel the sun on my face. I shouted the memory, not with my mouth, but with my mind. With every cell of my being. A desperate broadcast of a better time. The beach, July, my sister's laugh. Something changed. The immense pressure of the monster's presence, the weight of its gaze, flickered for a second. I opened my eyes. The sledgehammer man had stopped. The hammer was lowered halfway. Its form was wavering, like a bad TV signal. The solid black of its body seemed to shimmer, pixels of white light appearing and disappearing within it. It worked. Oh my God, it worked. "Leo!" I roared, the sound tearing from my throat. "Leo, wake the hell up. Think of something. Anything. A good memory. Now!" My voice, my raw terror, seemed to finally break through his mental prison. His head snapped towards me. The glassy look in his eyes sharpened, replaced by a dawning horror as he saw me dangling over nothing. He saw the monster. He saw the shrinking doorway. "Do it!" I screamed. He scrambled backwards, away from the monster, his eyes squeezed shut. His face was a mask of concentration and fear. "The award!" he yelled, his voice cracking. "The gallery! My first prize! The blue ribbon!" He started babbling, raw words tumbling out of him. The applause. Mr. Henderson shaking my hand. He had a sweaty palm. My painting, the big one, hanging on the main wall, everyone looking at it, at my work. The monster recoiled. It actually took a step back as if struck. A hissing sound came from it, a sound of static and agony. A large chunk of its shoulder dissolved into a flurry of black dust and blew away into the void. This was it. This was the weapon. Not fists, not running. Memories, hope. Leo pushed himself to his feet, a wild, feverish look in his eyes. He understood. He looked at me, then at the monster, and a strange fire lit his face. "First kiss!" he shouted, pointing at the thing. "Behind the gym! Sarah Jenkins!" She tasted like cherry chapstick and cigarettes. The monster's left arm disintegrated. It let out that horrible psychic scream, a wave of pain that vibrated my bones. I used the distraction, the momentary weakness, to haul myself up, clawing my way back onto the solid ground. I collapsed next to Leo, breathing in ragged, painful gasps. The white platform was now no bigger than a queen-sized bed. The doorway of light was flickering. It was shrinking. "It's not enough!" Min cried out from behind us. "The connection is closing. It's going to disconnect." A race. We were in a goddamn race. "Keep going," I yelled at Leo, stumbling to my feet. We stood side by side, facing the disintegrating nightmare. "Christmas morning, 1998! The red bike! It was so shiny!" I screamed, throwing the memory like a rock. The monster's legs buckled. It fell to one knee, its shape becoming more and more unstable. "Scoring the winning touchdown!" Leo roared. "The noise of the crowd! My dad was there! He was yelling my name!" Its torso blew apart, a cloud of angry, buzzing darkness. All that was left was the head, the jacket, and the one remaining arm, still clutching that hammer of shadow. The face, my face, was contorted in a rictus of pure hate. It tried to get up. It tried to raise the hammer one last time. The doorway was the size of a mail slot now, a thin sliver of light. Seconds left. We needed one more, a big one. We looked at each other. We didn't need to speak. We shouted together, our voices mingling, throwing the last of our mental energy at the thing. "Our first apartment! The key that barely worked. The crappy sofa we found on the street, painting the walls until 3 a.m, drinking cheap beer." It was a shared memory. Our memory. The monster stopped. The hate in its copied face vanished. For a split second, it just looked tired. Then, with a final, silent sigh, it dissolved. The jacket, the hammer, the face, it all came apart into a million motes of black dust that were instantly swallowed by the void. It was gone. The doorway was a pinprick of light. "Go!" Min screamed. There was no thought, only instinct. Leo and I lunged, a desperate, clumsy dive for that fading star. We threw ourselves forward, over the space where the monster had been. My hand was outstretched. The floor beneath my feet finally gave way completely. We were falling towards the last spark of hope in a universe of nothing. My fingers brushed the edge of the light. It felt like plunging your hand into warm water. Then everything was pulled. A violent, gut-wrenching lurch, not down, but forward. The roar of the void was replaced by a rushing, tearing sound. The blackness was ripped away, replaced by an explosion of blinding, painful white. My body screamed in protest as I was pulled through a space too small to exist. I was diving headfirst into the sun. The lurch wasn't a fall, it was a birth. A violent, ripping pull into a world of pure light. The black void and its grinding static vanished, replaced by a pressure that felt like it was turning me inside out. My skin burned. My lungs felt scoured. I was a bullet fired through the barrel of the sun. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. I was on my hands and knees, retching. Nothing came up. The ground wasn't the crumbling white chalk of the nightmare. It was solid, unmoving, gray and smooth like polished concrete, stretching into a misty, quiet horizon. The air was still, silent, no roar, no static. I pushed myself up, my body aching, my joints screaming. We were in a different place, a waiting room at the end of reality. In front of me, a few yards away, was the door. It wasn't a pinprick anymore. It was a rectangle of warm, inviting light, the size of a real door, pulsing gently. It was our way out. "Leo," I gasped, turning. "We made it. We actually—" The words died in my throat. He wasn't there. I stood alone on the gray plain. Min, the boy, was there. He stood a few feet away, small and still, watching me with eyes that seemed too old for his face, but the space beside me, where Leo should have been, was empty. "Leo?" My voice sounded small in the immense silence. A cold knot formed in my gut. He had been right behind me. We had dived together. "Leo!" I spun around, scanning the empty gray landscape. Nothing. No one. He couldn't have just disappeared. Where is he? I snapped at Min, my voice cracking with a rising panic. Did he get through already? Is he on the other side? The boy didn't answer. Not with his mouth. A voice slid directly into my brain. It was his, but without the childish fear. It was flat. Clinical. He's not on the other side, Alex? I recoiled, stumbling back a step. My blood ran cold. I stared at Min. His lips were a thin, unmoving line. What the hell was that? I whispered. He was never here, the voice in my head continued, patient and terrible. Not really. What are you talking about? He was right next to me. We fought that thing together. My own voice was a desperate, loud thing in the quiet. My dream is a dangerous place, the voice explained, each word a drop of ice water down my spine. My fear creates things. The sledgehammer man was born from my terror of my father. But you were an anomaly, an intruder. My mind needed a way to guide you, to help you survive long enough, so it built him for you. I stared at the spot where Leo had been. A ghost. An illusion. It was impossible. It wasn't true. Think, Alex. It took your memories, your idea of a friend, of a partner. It gave him a face you would trust. But who made the choices? Who pulled him when he froze? Who screamed the ideas? Who had the memory of the apartment? Huida, the apartment. Our first crappy apartment. The shared memory. Our memory. My mind scrambled backward, frantically replaying the events. Leo, frozen in a stupor until I screamed his name. Me, dragging him away from the shattering floor. His memories, the art prize, the first kiss, they felt thin, like something read from a script. But ours, painting the walls, drinking cheap beer, that one felt real. It felt solid. It was your memory, the voice confirmed, as if reading my desperate thoughts. He was just a mirror. He reflected what you needed to see. The solid gray floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. A wave of nausea hit me. The entire horrifying journey, the shared terror, the brief moment of triumph, I had done it alone. I had been talking to myself, yelling at myself, relying on a phantom created by a scared child's subconscious. The crushing weight of that loneliness was worse than the sledgehammer man. It was a violation. My mind, my memories, had been used as raw material to build a puppet. I looked at the doorway. The warm, pulsing light was beginning to flicker at the edges. A low hum started up again, the sound of the void returning, of the connection fraying. This place wasn't permanent. It was a temporary platform, and it was dissolving. I was alone. I had always been alone. And the only way out was closing. The choice wasn't a choice. It was an animal instinct. Stay here and be consumed by the nothingness while searching for a man who never existed, or save myself. The betrayal was staggering. A betrayal of a friendship that was never real. A betrayal of my own sanity. The hum grew louder. The edges of the doorway fizzled like a dying light bulb. It was shrinking. Fast. From a door to a window. From a window to a mail slot. My heart hammered against my ribs. My breath came in ragged bursts. I looked at the boy one last time. He wasn't a child. He was a keeper. A warden of this psychic prison. His expression was unchanged, neutral, waiting. "Damn you," I whispered. A scream tore from my throat. It was a howl of grief and rage and pure animal terror. It was for Leo, the friend I never had. It was for me, the fool who believed in him. I didn't think. I just ran. My legs pumped, eating up the gray distance. The light was a sliver. A crack. My eyes were fixed on it, the only thing that mattered. I threw my entire body forward in a desperate, graceless dive. The world behind me didn't matter. The boy didn't matter. The ghost of my friend didn't matter. Only the light. My fingers passed through first. The sensation was electric. The rest of my body followed, squeezed through an impossibly small space. For a split second, I felt a colossal finality behind me, like a vault door slamming shut, severing a cord forever. Then the world became a chaos of sensation. Not light, not darkness. Everything at once. The smell of rubbing alcohol and something metallic, like burnt wires. A persistent, low beep, rhythmic and steady. Beep, beep, beep. The cool, smooth surface of plastic or vinyl against my cheek. My eyelids were heavy, glued shut. I forced them open. The light was dim, gray, filtered through tired eyes. I was lying on my side on a padded table or a bed. I tried to sit up, but my head pounded with a dull, throbbing ache. Wires. There were wires stuck to my temples. I reached up a shaky hand and pulled one off. It left a sticky residue. I wouldn't do that. The voice was calm, real, a man's voice. I turned my head, wincing at the pull in my neck. A man in a clean, white lab coat stood a few feet away, holding a tablet. He had thinning hair and a tired, professional expression. He wasn't smiling. "Vitals are stabilizing. REM cycle terminated successfully," he said, more to himself than to me. He looked up from the tablet and met my eyes. "The simulation is over, Mr. Thorne. Welcome back." Simulation. Mr. Thorne. My name is Alex Thorne. The words were anchors in a sea of confusion. It was an experiment. A test. The void, the monster, Min. None of it was real. A surge of relief, so potent it felt like a drug, washed through me. It was over. The shared consciousness link? I managed, my voice a dry rasp. Was it stable? The scientist made a note on his tablet. Remarkably. The Folie à Deux protocol held far longer than we anticipated. Your subconscious and the control subjects, you built a very coherent narrative together. Control subject. The words hung in the air. My gaze drifted past him, to the other side of the sterile, dim room. There was another bed, identical to mine, and someone was sitting up. He was slowly, clumsily, pulling the same kind of wires from his own head. His face was pale, his dark hair a mess. He looked bruised by sleep, his eyes wide and struggling to focus. He blinked, looking around the lab in bewildered horror. Then his eyes found mine. My heart stopped beating. The beep of the monitor beside my bed flatlined for a second before screaming back to life. It was him. It was Leo. His eyes met mine. A sound tore through the room. A high, steady scream. It took me a second to realize it was the heart monitor beside my bed. The flatline was gone, replaced by a panicked shriek of electronics. Leo. He was real. He was here. He was pulling wires from his temples, his face a mask of the same bone-deep confusion I felt. He looked at me, then at his own hands, then back at me. His mouth opened, but no words came out. I wouldn't do that. The same calm voice. The man in the white lab coat. He didn't look at me. He was looking at Leo. "Vitals are spiking on subject B as well," he said, tapping his tablet. "Synchronicity is holding. Fascinating." Subject B. My mind snagged on the term. What is this? I pushed myself up. My head throbbed. The room was cold, sterile, all white walls and gray equipment. What the hell is going on? That thing in my head. That boy. He said Leo wasn't real. The scientist finally looked at me. He had a smile. It wasn't a normal smile. It stretched too far at the corners. It didn't reach his eyes. Ah, the Min construct. A clever little thing. The subconscious. It detected you, Mr. Thorne. It detected Mr. Gable. Two intruders in its space. So it did what any cornered animal would do. It tried to divide you, turn you against each other, make one of you abandon the other. It nearly worked. The words hit me. A lie. The whole devastating revelation in that gray space was a lie, a final trick. My eyes snapped back to Leo. He was still staring, his knuckles white where he gripped the edge of his bed. He was real. The terror we shared, the fight, the fall, it was real. A wave of relief so powerful it made me dizzy washed over me. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't alone. So we made it out, I breathed. We're okay. You are out of the simulation, yes? The scientist said, his creepy smile widening. And we are very grateful. He turned and gestured toward a massive dark screen that dominated one wall of the lab. The data we've collected is invaluable, truly groundbreaking. He tapped his tablet. The screen flickered to life. It wasn't a movie. It was a wall of charts and graphs, dozens of them, waving lines like angry snakes, red, green, blue, heart rate, adrenaline output, cortisol levels, galvanic skin response. Each was labeled. Subject A, Thorn. Subject B, Gable. And I saw it. I saw the moments. A huge, synchronized spike in red across both our panels. I recognized the timestamp. It was when the floor shattered. Another one, even higher. That was the Sledgehammer Man's face, up close. A flat line on my chart, followed by a chaotic surge. The dive into the light. All of our terror, our pain, our near-death moments, laid out in cold, hard numbers. They hadn't just been watching, they had been measuring. Data? Leo's voice was a rough croak. He finally found it. Data for what? Are you helping that kid? Is that what this is? Some kind of radical therapy? He was looking for an explanation. Any explanation that made sense. The scientist laughed. It wasn't a chuckle. It was a loud, barking laugh that echoed in the sterile room. It was the worst sound I had ever heard. Help him? The scientist said, wiping a tear of mirth from his eye. Oh, my dear boy, no, we aren't here to cure fear. We're here to perfect it, to map it, to understand its architecture. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to an excited whisper. To weaponize it. The air left my lungs. The room felt 10 degrees colder. What? I said. Just the one word. The subject, the boy you call Min, is patient 0. A child in a persistent vegetative state, with unprecedented neural activity. A natural generator. His mind is a fortress, and his nightmares are the guards. We couldn't get in, not until we found a way to piggyback on a stronger signal. He gestured from me to Leo. You, 2 minds, linked together, acting as a battering ram. You punched a hole through his defenses, and in doing so, you let us put our sensors inside. You experienced his terror, and we recorded every second of it. His smile was gone, replaced by a look of hungry ambition. Imagine it, gentlemen. A signal that can be broadcast. A weapon that doesn't level a city, but makes an entire army collapse in on itself. Each soldier trapped in their own private hell. No bullets, no bombs, just pure, targeted, engineered terror. You've just provided the blueprint. Behind him, I heard it. A solid, definitive sound. Click. The heavy steel door to the lab. A magnetic lock engaging. The trap had snapped shut. You son of a bitch! Leo snarled, swinging his legs off the bed. He was on his feet, unsteady but furious. You let us go. Right now. I'm afraid the experiment isn't quite over, the scientist said, his voice returning to that calm, professional tone. He set his tablet down on a steel counter. Phase 1 was observation. Phase 2 is reinsertion and long-term exposure analysis. We need to see what happens when the hope of escape is removed entirely. He reached for a tray on the counter. My eyes followed his hand. On the tray were 2 syringes filled with a clear liquid. My heart hammered against my ribs. A wild, frantic drumbeat. No, not again. Not back there. Run! I screamed. The word ripped out of my raw throat. It was pure instinct. I launched myself off the bed, a jolt of pain shooting up my leg. I ignored it. Leo was already moving. The room was small. Maybe 20 feet separated us from the door. The scientist was in the way. He was faster than he looked. He didn't try to fight us. He just sidestepped my clumsy charge, letting me stumble past him. He moved toward Leo. Leo swung a fist. It was a wild, desperate punch. The scientist ducked under it easily, his movements smooth and practiced. He wasn't just a scientist. I scrambled to my feet and turned, throwing myself at his back. I wrapped my arms around his chest, trying to pull him down. It was like tackling a statue. He grunted, a sound of annoyance. not pain. "Subject struggling," he said, loud and clear, as if dictating a note. "Administering sedative." With one arm, he reached back and grabbed a handful of my hair, slamming my head forward into his shoulder blade. Stars exploded behind my eyes. My grip loosened. He shoved me back, hard. I tripped over a medical cart and went down in a clatter of steel instruments. I looked up, dazed, my vision swimming. He had Leo pinned against the wall with one hand. In the other, he held a syringe. Leo kicked and struggled, his face a mask of primal fear. "Get off me! Get off!" "Don't worry, Mr. Gable," the scientist said, his voice low and soothing, a horrible parody of a doctor's bedside manner. "You'll be back in a familiar place very soon. No more confusing labs. Just the dark, just the sound, forever." He was bringing the needle toward Leo's neck. I saw red. I grabbed the heaviest thing I could reach, some kind of metal canister from the floor, and hurled it. It flew through the air and struck the scientist squarely in the side of the head. He yelled, a real cry of pain this time, and staggered back. Leo pushed off the wall and fell to the floor, gasping. The syringe flew from the scientist's hand, skittering across the smooth floor. I didn't wait. I didn't think. I scrambled for the door, pounding on the steel with my fists. "Help! Somebody help! U.S.!" It was useless. The walls were probably soundproof. Behind me, I heard a grunt and a thud. I spun around. The scientist had already recovered. He'd kicked Leo, who was trying to get up, square in the chest. Leo crumpled, wheezing. The man picked up the second syringe from the tray. He looked at me, his lips split and bleeding from where the canister hit him. The calm facade was gone. His eyes were cold fury. "You!" he snarled. He started walking toward me. Not fast. A slow, deliberate advance. He held the syringe up. Light glinted off the needle. There was nowhere to run. My back was against the locked door. The room had shrunk to this single, terrifying confrontation. My heart was going to explode. My breath was a ragged, useless gasp. I braced myself. Then he stopped. Just a few feet away. He looked past me, over my shoulder. He looked at the control screen on the wall. He smiled again. That terrible, wide smile. "Excellent," he whispered. "Peak response. The terror of inevitability." He lunged. It was too fast. I tried to twist away, but he was on me. He grabbed my arm, forcing it behind my back until I screamed. I felt a sharp, cold sting in the side of my neck. It was done. A wave of icy fire shot through my veins. My muscles went slack. My legs gave out from under me. I slid down the cold steel of the door, my body refusing to obey. The room began to spin, the white walls blurring into a gray smear. My vision tunneled. The last thing I saw before the darkness took me was the scientist standing over me, a triumphant look on his bloody face. And behind him, reflected in his cold eyes, was the image on the giant screen. It was the hallway, the long, dark hallway from the dream. Waiting, and this time, I knew. There was no waking up,